Best intro in the biz.
That's right. That's how we roll.
All right. Man,
Ugh,
that is a good intro. It always gets me like pumped up.
that's right.
Um to the right headspace. So we gotta get serious about having Alex on. I've been talking to him.
Yeah, yeah,
He's willing to come on.
yeah,
A little bit nervous because he's not used to speaking publicly. I'm not sure if he's
yes,
going to want to
yeah,
show his face, but I think it would be.
yeah,
I want to talk to that guy. Something I
yeah,
don't know, just instinctually,
yeah, for
intuitively.
sure, for sure. He's been listening to our old episodes, like when it was called "Let's Be Frank." He's been listening. He's been commenting on old stuff.
Yeah, he's a piece
He's
of
an OG. He's an OG.
he's an
Totally.
OG, and he's like somehow a part of the show.
Yeah, of course.
And like Chris, by the way,
Yeah, of course.
know, and
Hmm.
yeah,
Chris Woods is like this transient figure. Not really.
the truth is we should also have Chris on, but
Yes,
that makes me scared.
I know. I'm quite concerned. I'm
You know what
concerned.
I mean?
People have told me that I have an intense energy, but I feel like I'm gonna be intimidated by Chris.
I'm not going to be intimidated by him. I just want to be able to understand him
Yeah, no, that's
because
what I
he's like
mean. Yeah,
he's like an alien from the future.
yeah,
Okay, I have no idea what he's talking about,
yeah,
and I'll just be sitting there like, eh?
yeah.
What? All right.
Yes,
Anyway,
yes.
so
What did I want to say, sir? I went to this wonderful weekend. It wasn't even a weekend. It was like 5 days at the in the Poconos
oh man,
for Shavuot, and I met a good number of cool people. One of the people I met. Oh man, dude, you don't know what I did, man. So during, the all night learning session, I was learning with my friend. He learns, Likutei Torah. This is something that was written by commentary on the Torah by the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad. And we were learning something about whatever, just like the ego and all this kind of thing. And we were relating it to like how basically, we have to know that like everything is temporary in this world and how we are temporary, et cetera, et cetera. And then after this whole kind of thing, I just went at him like, and it was in front of like other people joined us to like listened to the conversation, and then I just went into like, okay, so now I'm going to throw a curveball at you. What is it Resurrection of the Dead? And everybody was just like, and then I'm like, listen, man, uh, um, you know, I don't know if you noticed. I told them, I don't know if you noticed. There's a lot of people here at this getaway that unfortunately use drugs, right, to mask and to get away from dealing with just stuff, right? Uh,
Yeah.
whether it's ayahuasca, whether it's mushrooms, whether it's whatever, right? Ecstasy, whatever you want to call it, MDMA. And there were people around me, there were people around us who like are in that category, which is very, very funny. But a few people appreciated what I was saying because I said, listen, if you I hate to break it to you, if you don't believe in resurrection of the dead, it's one thing if you were like expecting or wanting your, you know, your loved ones to come back, but just believing in just that it's going to happen, that it's supposed to happen, it's like that it's a thing, that it's part of Judaism, then I hate to break it to you, you might be an apostate. You know, like you might be a redneck.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in resurrection of the dead, you might be an apostate.
I don't know if that applies to anyone in our generation.
I know that. And I realized that the nanosecond that I said that at that time. So I looked at everybody, I'm just like, what am I expecting here? What am I asking for here? I'm asking for, you know, I'm asking for a lot.
Yeah. I mean, look, can I unpack this a little bit for the folks at home?
Yeah.
Okay. So Greg went on a Shavuot holiday getaway, which was it's organized by Orthodox
Yes.
Jews.
Can I
Okay.
pause you for 1 second? It's organized by a person who grew up religious, largely attended by people who grew up religious and are having their own like crises for various number of reasons. A lot of them have experienced abuse, some of them experienced this and that.
Just a
Yeah.
moment, Connie. Can you bang the pots and pans a little louder? Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Anyway, so a lot of these people, you know, are part of that what I call demographic. Just to give you some context. So they grow up with these things where to a lot of them, these things are dogma. And I don't even know, listen, I'm not you know presuming. I'm just asking a question. How many people have thought deeply about
Okay.
this concept? So now you
Okay.
can continue. I just want to get set the ground.
I'll make
Yeah.
it. I love it. I'll make it brief. Okay. Um, so generally speaking, the attempt at this getaway get together was for some people who are, let's say, experiencing some dissonance, but to have a genuine what would be called Orthodox observant experience of the Shavuot holiday. Now, if you'd go there, you wouldn't see what you traditionally expect to see as Orthodox Jews, right? There are many people who are on many different levels of observance, some kind of, seemingly far away, kind of based on the way they're dressed, others a little bit closer. Without over generalizing, that's pretty much what you would see there. Not your typical Orthodox experience, although they're trying to keep it trying to keep the integrity of the holiday there, and that's where our good friend Greg was. Sorry, I'm a little bit cuckoo myself. Okay, so and he showed me some footage, and it was very, very interesting. I really enjoyed that graphic with the Mount Sinai,
Dude, the guy who put this together, he's incredible with lighting. He does like lighting for weddings and all these kind of things. So he created an incredible thing
yeah,
with all this stuff.
and it was in the Poconos, which hits me in the feels because I spent time in the Poconos in my childhood. It was the forested area of Pennsylvania is beautiful. It really is very, very special. It's very beautiful. When my parents were doing okay, when I was a little kid, we had a home there. And I think I spoke about it several times. I was wondering why we didn't live there. There was a large, spacious home with a backyard and a front yard. And most of my good toys were there, right? It just seemed like this place that we went to when I was a little kid. We had the best time. There was snow. It wasn't all dirty. Anyway, it was very, very pretty. Very pretty. It's good in the summer and in the winter. It's really, really, Pennsylvania is a beautiful state. That's where Greg was. So, yeah, please continue.
No, what else? I mean,
No, oh yeah, no, but
no,
so
you were gonna unpack this
I was
whole
gonna say,
thing.
yeah. I was gonna say, sorry, I got lost in the beauty of Pennsylvania.
Yes,
Uh,
it's America also. It feels very much like America. There was a
Pennsylvania,
giant on the way on the way, it was already still Jersey, but it was like northwestern New Jersey, like Sparta, New Jersey.
yeah,
There's a giant American flag above a gun range. Like
yeah.
one of the biggest American flags you'll ever see above a gun range. It's amazing.
Yeah. I like Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
A little bit too blue, but still, it feels American, and uh, it's where I spent time as a kid. It was near Stroudsburg, PA,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's a
Same.
very American. That was
Same.
a very American feeling
Yeah.
city, little town actually. When I
Yeah.
was a kid,
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like now. I haven't been there in years.
I was there at the Walmart this weekend,
Okay,
and it's similar to what it was.
okay,
So it felt very American.
yeah,
It felt very NASCAR. I made the comment that it feels like a
yeah,
NASCAR event.
yeah. American. I got
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
All right. Now, as far as that, the whole thing, you're talking to these people that you're talking about, and bringing up the most, controversial topic, not controversial to me, but to people who consider themselves sober or rational, right? The principle of the resurrection of the dead. That's absolute foundation of the Jewish faith. It's the 13th principle of faith, right? As the articles of our faith were compiled by Maimonides around 800 years ago, right? Kind of, Maimonides was an excellent compiler. He was quite talented at compiling things, and this is one of the things that he compiled, right? And so we believe that uh, that the dead will be resurrected physically, not in some metaphorical way, not in a symbolic way, but literally the dead will be resurrected. The people will return back to their bodies. Okay, and then life will continue from that point on, obviously with some adjustments, but initially people will be brought back from the dead as they died in the same condition that they died in, so that we would be able to recognize our loved ones. And then after everyone is resurrected and everyone is reunited with their loved ones, then people start to change back. If you were an elderly person, your body starts to heal and then becomes young, and you end up at 22. Now, obviously, this is not all the details of this particular concept. There's infinite details to this discussion, but this is basically what we're talking about here: the actual physical resurrection of the dead, not in a symbolic way, in a physical way. Now, a lot of people who, let's say, came from not religious families, or not particularly religious families, or not very spiritually minded people, right? There's a lot of things that they can relate to in Judaism. There's a lot of wisdom, there's a lot of practicality, there's a lot of good culture, there's a lot of good food, beautiful songs, lots of things to connect to. Even if you're kind of semi-agnostic, person who calls themselves a rationalist, or even if you're a believer in God, yet it doesn't seem like, you're one of those people who's like, all right, I believe in God, but I'm going to go by what I've seen him do so far. It doesn't seem like he does stuff like that. I don't see many miracles. If there is a God, then he likes the laws of nature, and it doesn't seem like it's going to change anytime soon. I think that's where most people find themselves. Most people kind of, who are dancing around faith, right? Who are kind of like engaging with it, but also at the same time dealing with their own doubts and their own questions. So that the topic of the resurrection of the dead, that's the toughest one for most people. Which, on the one hand, is understandable, and on the other hand, not really understandable at all. Let me explain quickly. I'll make it concise because we have a new focus on the show, folks, and I'm going to get to it. On the one hand, you have, people are like, all right, look, I've been alive for 44 years. I've seen stuff happen. There seems to be a pattern. People, they're born a certain way. They go through life a certain way. There's a certain pattern of development, and they die. I don't really see very much, veering from that thing. And the resurrection of the dead, right, is very, very, very different than anything that anybody experiences throughout the course of their day, right? Okay. And yet, on the other hand, this is the most constricted possible mindset that a person can have. Because you have to ask yourself, like, what problem do you really have with the concept of resurrection of the dead? There was a point, can we all agree, and I think even scientists would agree, that there was a point where there was absolutely nothing. There's this thing called nothing. And then there was something. That's pretty remarkable. That's more remarkable than making a something out of something that it was. There was a point in time and space, really before time and space, where there was nothing. Nihilo, right? Ex nihilo, right? Am I saying that? I don't know Latin, folks. I'm just saying stuff that I think.
Ex nihilo, yeah, that's correct.
Okay, there's ex and then nihil. Nihilo obviously means nothing, right? So ex, I think, means something. You know what? I'm going to go back and study Latin, folks, okay? So I can say that. But I know for a fact, I'm pretty sure that nihilo sounds like nil.
I think it's ex nihilo means before something. I think
before something. Yeah, there was, okay, if that's the case, then
pre something.
Yeah, pre something. I like that better than what I said. Thank you, Greg. Pre something. There was a pre something. Is everybody okay with that? Can we all like?
Here, one second.
Everybody's gonna be like, yeah.
From
yeah.
Oh no, X means from or out of nothing.
Out of nothing.
Out of nothing. Yeah, nihilo means nothing. And
there was a nihilo at some point,
yeah.
And then there was a something.
Yeah.
Okay. And
yesh me'ayin is
in Hebrew, right?
Something from nothing. There is something from.
And then there was a something. There was a nothing, and then a something. It's much harder to get a something from a nothing, right? So God did that. God did that. He made something from nothing. Now, the resurrection of the dead is something from something. That's way easier.
Yes.
Right. And then the classical examples that, people, Jews are people, right? And they've been people since the beginning, and people have thoughts and minds and questions. Mm-hmm. And traditionally, one of the traditional responses to people who may have had this question from the rabbis, right? The sages, our sages of old, they would explain like think of a seed, right? Before it produces the plant that it's going to produce. First, it's a seed, and then it rots. It has to rot in order to kind of bloom or to release the contents and grow of that is what's within the seed. In a similar way, that's what happens to the body, right? That the body of the person, it's planted into the earth, it rots, and then that eventually at the appointed time will produce the resurrected physical body, right? But with a you might ask yourself, well, what's the point of this process? Well, that's an entire different topic. It's called the purification of the snake venom. That's the name of this concept in Hebrew. I'm translating it, right? So basically, because of the events of the Garden of Eden, right? And if you look at that particular event with adult eyes, and you look at all the information that we have on it, right? Not the nursery school story that most people are aware of, right? If you look at it in detail, it was a cosmic event, and it caused a catastrophic poisoning of reality itself. All of reality was tainted with this substance, which it's a substance of consciousness, which tainted all of reality, the entire universe, and even the spiritual worlds as well. It's called the zuama, which is it's the snake poison, right? It's the influence of the serpent, and all physical reality was tainted with this. And something about going through life and then dying and then having your body decompose in the earth purifies the physical substance that your body is made of. It somehow extracts the snake poison from that substance. Then the substance is recombined to a body that is not tainted with the snake poison, and that body can endure indefinitely. Because originally man was not meant to die. Adam and Eve were never created to die. They were created, they were going to eat from the tree of life and just live on. God didn't create humanity so that they would die. Okay, but so the situation, the type of reality that we're in right now is called the extraction of the snake poison reality. That's what we're all doing essentially by dying. Okay. So that's just kind of, we're not really discussing the topic. That's just kind of like an intro to the idea, not even an intro to the topic, just the idea itself. And, but we're going to move on to something now that is related, of course. It's actually very related because we're going to be focused now on, well, when's this going to happen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, that's been the core, the foundation of all our discussions, because we desperately want that to happen. I desperately want that to happen. We believe, thank you, more pots and pans, please. And brings life to the show.
Yes. It's called More Cowbell.
Yeah, more cowbell, please. She doesn't get that. I'm gonna get in trouble. Okay. By the way, Bruce Dickinson was a lion tamer in his youth. Did you know this?
Who the hell is Bruce Dickinson?
Christopher Walken. He in that skit from Saturday Night Live, right? With the more cowbell, right?
I don't even remember that skit. I just know the cowbell part.
It's a good skit, right? Not terribly unrelated to what we're talking about.
Yes.
But so the guy Christopher Walken was a lion tamer before he became a Broadway dancer and then an actor. Can you believe that?
That's crazy.
I thought I heard it all, but apparently not.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. And Randy Quaid is cool. We're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
And so is Roseanne.
Yeah.
And there's some little rays of hope.
Roseanne shared my Instagram story twice today. Sounds cool.
she shared your Instagram story
Yeah,
on
twice.
Instagram.
Yeah, but like one was actually both had to do with something that she spoke to James Lindsay about. So yeah.
I'm glad that Roseanne likes you. I can
Why do you
cope.
think she doesn't like you?
I could no, I don't. I'm not saying she doesn't, but I no, I can kind of like latch onto your coattails and kind of just
I
kind of
mean,
like
I
I'll
don't
be in
know
your
that
entourage.
I don't know that there's any cult to latch onto because you know I've been she she's been saying or her son has been saying that, you know, that I should be on the show on her podcast 30 for. But the thing is, I'm nobody. I'm not James Lindsay. I'm not even the traveling clat. This guy who's like a pro-Israel guy who has actually a very good channel. But most people outside the pro-Israel space don't know who he is. But I'm not
Even I
even
don't know who he is.
exactly. So I'm not even him, apparently.
Yeah, you're
So
definitely not
so
that guy.
so it doesn't even matter what I have to say, and that what I have to say, it could be, you know, valuable or useful or you know, for people to learn about and apply it to what's going on today. If I'm,
You know who you are?
you know,
You're me, man. You represent my product. Remember that
I'm
scene
what,
from
what, what?
Shaft? I was gonna try to
Saw,
do an impression, but
I never
I
saw
realized
Shaft. I
I
never
don't
saw Shaft.
remember. I don't remember the scene well enough to do an
Uh,
impression of the guy.
I never saw
Remember?
Shaft.
So in the movie Shaft, there was like this Puerto Rican drug lord, right?
Okay.
Remember?
Dude, I didn't see the movie.
He's like, puto, why you flinch? You never heard that?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
No, no. Yeah.
Okay, so if you never saw the movie, then this is not gonna be fun explaining it to you.
Is it the old version or the newer version?
No, no, no. This is with Samuel L. This is
The
like,
remake. Okay.
yeah, the remake, yeah. Hey, could you put on that scene before we start the serious stuff?
I could do it.
Just write puto, why you flinch? Oh, that scene has nothing to do with anything. I just want to see it.
Yeah. Shaft meets Peoples in coffee shop. Is this what, why you flinch, Buddha?
Yeah.
Oh no, this is let's see.
Oh my god,
One second.
dude, that meme that Eric posted with the Mike Tyson with the two
Oh, that is
pigeons.
hilarious. That's
Dude,
hilarious.
I'm kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the white boys. Todos los blanquitos. ¿Sabes eso comí? Diablo. Now, I heard you need a job, but this...
You know when guys like you go down for good? When they get aspirations. When they try and rise above their station. But this contract killing thing you got with Walter Jr. Do yourself a favor. You're a 2-bit, 3-block dope dealer. Stick to what you know.
Cálmate. Stick to what I know? Stick to what I know? Fuck you, motherfucker. I'm a star. Yo soy el Meyembe. You ain't shit. You ain't even a fucking pig no more.
Do you think that makes me less dangerous? Or more dangerous? I see you somewhere I don't think you belong. I will kill you.
Calma. Mira. Look. I respect you. I like you. That's why you always want to fuck me?
Tenga buen día.
Puta, why you flinch?
That's very funny.
Yeah, no,
Very
but
funny.
basically that character, he tells Christian Bale, who's in that movie too,
Yeah.
who plays like he's kind of like this, not surprisingly, a psychotic white boy from a wealthy, you know, from an
Yeah.
elite family
Yeah.
who went crazy, and so somehow I don't remember how he gets in contact with this guy. He goes, I need something from you. I need you to be me in your world. You know, he wants him
To be
push
me
his
in your world.
drugs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right? He goes, I want you to be me in your world, meaning you take my drugs and you
Yeah.
sell it to all your rich white friends and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that's me, right? Telling you, like, when you hang out with Roseanne, you go, I'd be me.
Ay. It's a whole
I was just having fun with that. That's
yes.
fun.
Yes, sir. So what were we talking about? We were talking
Yeah,
about
we're talking about the resurrection of the dead.
oh yeah.
We're going to that. But I just want to say before we start that, something happened today, and there's a lot of I find it very upsetting. I
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
think it's I think it's I'm scared. This scares me a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it's a ruse.
Talking about the
Maybe it's
Trump
not
Elon thing.
the Trump Elon thing, but
Yeah.
if you can go to my and this is very relevant. If you can go to my X and just kind of like play the last thing that I posted, excuse me, you'll see what I mean in a second.
Oh yeah, the Mike Tyson thing.
No, I
That's the
posted
last thing that you posted.
the last thing I posted was the Rebbe.
I don't see anything with the Rebbe.
Can you go to my replies, maybe replies?
Yeah. Oh, okay, I see it. Oh, okay. Yes. This is good. This is good. Second. Yeah.
I even put
Oops.
like attention, Elon and
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that.
oh man.
I wonder who posted that. I mean, the Chabad posted it. I see it, but I guess
Yeah,
they're
Jewish Educational Media.
fascinating. I wonder who's running that one.
I was literally thinking in my head to say to you
Yeah.
before even posting that. I was wondering, does the Rebbe himself run like post that account? Like, is he controlling that
Yeah.
account? Because I don't know, somebody who's very connected.
No, somebody who understands, whatever, who understands what's going on. For sure. They have to be that person.
Yeah. So I'll say 60 seconds. I can just the conversation for those who have been following these conversations for the past, how long have we been doing this already?
It's gonna be 4 years in October.
Okay,
So for 3.5 years.
3.5 years, yeah, because Rafi's birthday's coming up. So we've been talking about supernatural things and the expectation to see supernatural things, and what the Torah says we should expect to see in the times of Mashiach at the different stages of the messianic process, and certainly the resurrection of the dead is a key point in that. That's, I would say, the milestone, the primary milestone of that, and all the stuff we talked about, UFOs, certain dates that are talked about in the Torah, and the UFOs that are being talked about in the news, and supernatural things, and and then 2027 and all this kind of stuff. A lot of things that we know that we read about in the Torah seem to be kind of overlapping with what people are talking about in the mainstream world, right? Because the Torah is a very niche world, but a lot of these things seem to be manifesting in a non-Torah mainstream form, right? And yet it's essentially fits the description of what the Torah is talking about, and even timelines are starting to kind of converge in this discussion. And so we decided that we're going to get serious about talking about, to make this a primary talking point. And without further ado, unless Greg wants to add something.
No. So we're watching this video.
Can you tell the folks at home what we're about to see?
We're about to see an interview I conducted with Rabbi Weisberg 3 years ago at his home. And Rabbi Weisberg seems to be one of the experts on the subject of the resurrection of the dead and Mashiach and some of the sources. He actually, I think, knew your brother. I think he even prayed in the same synagogue as your brother at one point in Pomona, New York, in Muncie. And he graciously was, invited me to his home to do the interview. And just to let folks at home know this, there was a little, speaking of sound, there was a little issue with the sound with the microphone, but generally speaking, it was okay. And this interview is about an hour and 20 minutes. So, and he really goes into the sources and just straight regular sources, actually. Some people expect, like obscure, rare Kabbalistic things. I mean, there are. He mentions these things, but he goes into just a lot of things about in Sefer Daniel, in the book of Daniel, also the Chumash, the 5 books of Moses, and also things that the Rebbe said, with which line up with certain things, which were quite interesting, and also Rashi. So basically, like main commentators, mainstream as it gets, mainstream prophets, mainstream commentators. It's just a matter of putting it all together, which not many people either know how to do or even want to, because, like we said, nobody wants to tackle the subject because it's very like mysterious to many people. That's at best. So, okay, we're gonna watch, and then we're gonna talk about how this lines up with what we've been hearing from the X community on X. Yeah, should be interesting.
Rabbi Isser Weisberg. First, I just want to thank Rabbi Weisberg for giving his time today. I guess you're very busy, I'm assuming, to give this interview. I just want to say that this interview is going to be in the merit of the refuah, the full refuah of
By the way, this is when your brother was still physically with us, and it was in the merit of his recovery. And it's interesting that we're talking about this topic. You're muted, Frank.
Do you recall what day?
What day it was?
Yeah, this is obviously, this must have been at the last days of June. I'm trying to figure out
May 22nd, 2022. This was posted, so it's probably like a little bit before that. It was like, I think it was like shortly before Lag BaOmer. The holiday of Lag BaOmer.
I think there's a reason why I couldn't participate in this interview. I was hoping to. I was really looking forward. It was, I think, my idea to have him on. You're the one who made it happen because you actually were near him. But like, I felt like it had something to do with my brother, who I think he was not feeling well at that time, and I had to attend to it in some way.
Yeah.
So
I think I even mentioned it by Weisberg. I'm like, I want to do something, and for the recovery and all that stuff. So yeah, he was nice about it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a minor detail that this happened just a few days before my brother went to the next world, and then it'll all make sense when you hear the topic of this discussion. So.
Correct, absolutely correct.
Velvel Zev Wolf Ben Leah, also known as Dr. Vladimir Zelenko. Should have a speedy recovery, a full refuah. And pretty much every episode of anything we film is going to be dedicated dedicated to his refuah. Zat Hashem.
I mean,
So let's just, I guess we'll dive right in, Rabbi Weisberg. You mentioned in one of your first videos about, I guess, the end time numbers, the Kates numbers, referring to 1290 and 1335, and which is at the end of Daniel, Sefer Daniel, which referred to apparently a 45-year window, which began in the year 1982.
When you wear these pinstripes, and they expect the best.
Of, I guess, CE, of the Common Era, and concludes in 2027. Can you please elaborate how this is determined? How do we come to this calculation?
so basically, in the Sefer Daniel, the end time, the Kates is revealed to him through Malachim, through angels, 5 times. And the question, there's a lot of not controversies, there's a lot of different opinions of how to interpret each time. According to Rashi, who's the main commentator on Tanakh, the most established and respected commentator, there's really only 2 time periods. There's only one of them is 1290, and the other one is 1335. So you're familiar with the other. There's 2 times that the Daniel was told that the end time is after. It says either it's repeated once. It's told to him in Aramaic. Part of Book of Daniel is in Aramaic, and part of it is in Lashon Kodesh in Hebrew. So once it's revealed to him in Aramaic, and it's Idon v'idonin uplag Idon, which means 2.5 times. That's what the angel tells him, 2.5 times. The other time he tells him that it's going to be Moyed Moyadim v'chatzi. It's going to be in chapter 7. The angel tells him Idon v'idonim that uplag Idon, that 2 times and a half a time, and then in chapter 12 he tells him Moyed Moyadim v'chatzi, 2.5 times. So that's the 2 times that it's revealed the end time. The other one is in Daniel chapter 8, where he tells him that it's going to be after 2,300 years, Erev Baker 2,300. And then at the end of Daniel, the Malach tells him that it's going to be, in one verse he says it's going to be 1290, and the next verse he tells 1290 days, and then he says 1335 days. So the consensus of all the commentaries is that it's talking about years. And Rashi figures out that the 2.5 times are actually the exact same case, because Rashi says it doesn't say what times. So how do you know what's the length of a time and what's the length of a half a time? So Rashi says that the time is referring to from the time the Jews entered the land of Israel until they build the first temple. That's the one time. That's 480 years. And the second time, it says 2.5 times. The second time is the duration of the first Beis HaMikdash. These are 2 major time periods. If Daniel is told a time period in his mind, well, what's a time period that's sort of fixed and known? The second time period was the duration of the first temple, because Daniel was between. This prophecy was told after the destruction of the first temple, before the building of the second temple. So the next figure, which was a famous number, would be 410. So we have the 480 years till the temple was built, from when they left Egypt, and the time and the duration of the first temple, which is 400. That's 480, and 410 is 890. And then you have a half a time. So we take the 890 and we divide it in half, and we get 445. So 445 and 890 is 1335. So that's the exact number, which at the end of Daniel in chapter 12, it says 1335. And then the other prophecy, where he's told in chapter 8 that it's going to be 2,300 years. So it says that until the evening and the morning, 2,300 years. So Rashi says the evening and the morning has a double meaning. First of all, evening and the morning means there's a prophecy that when Mashiach comes, the evening, the nights are going to be as bright as the day. There's going to be such a revelation of godliness and holiness that it will always be light. So Erev Baker means at the time the redemption, when the night will be like day. Rashi says there's a second allusion over here, the numeric value of the word Erev and Baker. So if you take the numeric value of the word Erev and Baker, in Hebrew it's 574. And then, so Rashi says, so you take the 574 and you add it to the 2,300, and you get 2,874, right? So according to Rashi, the 2,874 is what's 2,874? That's the amount of time. If you take, the pasuk says that from the time that the carbon tamid ceased to operate in the base of Mikdash. So Rashi points out, it's unclear where Rashi got this from, but Rashi says that they stopped, the Romans didn't allow them use it before they destroyed the base of Mikdash. The Romans controlled Eretz Yisrael at that point, so the Jews were not free.
The Korban Tamid is the perennial sacrifice.
Perennial sacrifice that was sacrificed every single day in the temple twice a day, and that's there's all different kinds of sacrifices. People could be sacrifices on different holidays, but the one that's every single day of the year, nonstop, is always twice a day. That's the Korban Tamid. So when that ceased, that really was a major catastrophe, because the whole purpose of Beis Hamikdash is the carbon, and this is the carbon that serves as a kapara, as forgiveness for all the sins of the Jews. So according to Rashi, it stopped 6 years before the Korban. So Rashi makes a calculation that from 6 years, from when the time 6 years before the Korban, right, and is going to be is going to be so it's from the time that Rashi says, from the time the Jews went to Mitzrayim until the Korban Tamid was ceased to operate in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash was 1584 years. And then Rashi says you take the 1290 of the end of Daniel, so the 1584. You add the 1290 and you get 2874. The 2874 was the 2300 plus the numeric value of Erev Baker. Are you following?
Yes.
So Rashi says, so basically what is Rashi saying? The prophecy in chapter 8, the 2300 years, is basically the 1290, because right, like we just said, because you have to add the 1290 to get the 2874, which is, so that's one prophecy. The prophecy of 2.5 times is the prophecy of, we just said 1335, right? And then explicitly at the end of Daniel. So according to Rashi, which is the main commentator on the books of the Hebrew Bible, and the most authoritative and the most accepted, there's only two dates that Daniel was given: 1290 and 1335. So there's two major questions here. First of all, what's the starting point? When do we start counting? Obviously, it's not from the time of according to the Rishonim, from Reb Saadia was the first one who started trying to figure out the Kitzim that we know of. I mean, the Gemara talks about it, the Zohar talks about it. There's very early times, but then in later times, Reb Saadia lived in the 7th century, and then the Rishonim started talking about it. Rashi and the Ramban and the Ibn Ezra and all the other commentaries, they started working on the Kitzim. So it seemed to them that because it says from the time that of the Churban, or 6 years before the Churban, you count 1290 or 1335. So they're going to calculate that Mashiach is going to come either 1290 or 1335 years after the Churban. Okay, now that time passed a long time ago. So that was in the 1400s. So that passed. So that's gone.
Right, can you stop it for a moment?
We have to figure out another starting point. So that's no.
Yeah.
So the rabbi keeps saying the Churban.
Yeah.
So for the folks at home, the Churban is the catastrophic destruction of the temple.
Yeah.
Specifically the second temple. Okay, so so we're talking about these two numbers, right, which are interpreted as years, right, that are spoken of in Daniel 1290 and 1335, right, in the book of Daniel, right, those familiar with the book, the angel tells Daniel there's 1290 and 1335. He uses those two numbers. Those of you know this well. So again, what's the starting point? When do we start counting 1290, 1335, right? That's what the rabbi is discussing right now, from the destruction of the second temple. That's the Churban that he's referring to. Okay, please continue.
Number one. The second thing we got to do is figure out these two numbers. Why are the two numbers? Why? So and the one right after the other. They're not even two parts, because if you look in Daniel, 12, he says, in Pasuk Yud Aleph, he says, Elef Masayim V'Tishim. But Daniel is saying, he tells him like this, he says, from the time that the Korban Tamid was ceased in the second base of Mikdash, and then he talks something about an abomination, a sinful abomination. We'll get to that a little later. It's going to take 1290 years. Okay? And then he says, Ashrei HaMechaka, lucky is the person who reaches 1335 years. So what are these two numbers? What's a 1290 and 1335? So let's start with the second question first, because it's easier to deal with. So basically you have three approaches by the early commentators. Rashi says something fascinating. Rashi says that Mashiach is going to come after 1290 years, whatever the correct starting point is. Rashi's starting point proved to be incorrect. I just want to point out, when we say a great person like Rashi, who we believe had Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, and we say he was wrong, we don't mean he was wrong in the simple sense of the word. There was truth to what he was saying. There was a possibility, an opening. There was a gate open in heaven that the redemption could have come at that time, but we just didn't merit it. But it wasn't the final redemption. It was a possible redemption. The Barbanel says that all the kitzim and all the different calculations that all the great sages throughout the generation have given, in the Gemara there are several, in the Zohar there are several, and all this form throughout the generations. Even though the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that you're not supposed to try to figure out the end time, but it actually curses somebody who does. Almost, dozens of great Jewish leaders from the time of the Gemara until recent times have attempted to do it anyway. So that's parenthetically an interesting point, because people ask you, what are you talking about these things? The Gemara says you're not allowed to. The Rambam, even in his book, in the Mishnah Torah, he codifies this, and he says that you're not allowed to calculate the kates. Interestingly, the Rambam in a letter himself calculates the kates. Basically, he's violating what he himself, what he paskin. So the people ask us, I just want to say parenthetically, because people might have this question. The Rambam wrote a whole sefer called Sefer HaGeula. This sefer was written. It has a lot of things about the redemption, but also he has an extensive treatment of trying to figure out the kitzim of Daniel. That's the Ramban has his kitzim. So he writes in the introduction, why am I doing this? The Gemara says not to. So he says 2 points. He says the Gemara says not to. It means to say, if somebody comes along and he says, I have Ruach HaKodesh, or I figured this out, I'm 100% sure I'm right, and he's a great person, and he ends up to be wrong, it's going to be a great source of
downfall,
disillusionment and depression. Maybe people say, you know what, he said Mashiach's coming, he didn't, maybe Mashiach's never coming. That's number one. The second thing the Ramban says is that the reason why do you have these kitzim in Daniel? Why was it written? I mean, not everything. God spoke to Nevi'im. We have traditions. There were millions of Nevi'im. We don't even know their names. So the Nevi'im that we have, the books of the prophets, these are prophecies that Hashem decided He wanted them to write. He told them, I want this to be part of. I want this written down. I want this to be part of Torah Shebiksav, the Jewish Bible. Why would God tell Daniel that Daniel maybe was curious about the Ketz, so the Malach is telling him the Ketz. Why would he write it down for?
So if I turned off Ada tomorrow, I would need to double my support teams. My name is Eric Berdoulis. I work at Checker, and I've been at Checker for 2 years, but been in the startup space for 15. 2 years ago when I joined, we had 65 different ways that a customer could contact us. We were getting all of these contacts, voice,
Hold on, folks.
email,
Greg will
chat,
be with us in a second.
We weren't responding
to
to them in a timely fashion.
the
And so just
commercial.
to start, we were trying to solve the problem of how do we deliver a really exceptional
Sorry
experience
about
for our
that.
candidates, but do so within budget. Generally, people care about is this saving us money, and is it delivering a better experience? And I would say, yes, it's saving us money. We flipped on generative in April of last year for our customers, and compared to the declarative bot, it doubled CSAT. Then seeing the personalization turn on in Q4 and some of the deeper resolutions that we were able to provide, like the bot actually giving answers to customers in a really timely fashion and like very detailed answers, and seeing that rise from
Sorry,
50
folks, I can't
to
turn off the commercial.
76.
Greg,
We just started
Yeah,
trying
there
to
he is.
figure out,
All right.
like, how do we actually deliver
What's the purpose if you can't figure it out? If you're not allowed to figure it out, you have a part of a Torah. You're supposed to learn the whole Torah. There's part of Torah. No, I have to skip this page because we're not supposed to learn it. So what is it there for? And after Mashiach comes, what's the point of saying, we see this is what it meant? Like it's too late. Like it has no value after Mashiach comes. So there are points. So obviously there's a reason why you have to figure them out. So what does the Gemara say not to figure out? So he says Rashi mentions also the clue is Daniel himself was told these end times, and then he wasn't allowed to reveal them. The pasuk says in verse 9, it says that the angel told Daniel, "Sumim v'chasum hadvarim ades kates." It's completely sealed. You have to seal this. It's hidden. It's secret. Ades kates. So Rashi, ades kates means until the time of the end. So what does Rashi say? Rashi says that means not till after the kates. Until that time period, I'm going to allow people to figure it out. Because the purpose of the kates is to give Jews some time to prepare. Because people are going to be we waited 2,000 years. And
hey, Greg, sorry.
Sometimes we feel, Mashiach will come 2,000 years. Who knows what he's coming? I mean, give me a break, you know.
Another word that the rabbi keeps using is the kates. The kates.
Yeah.
You know, like we're not talking about Phoebe Cates here.
It means the end. Yeah.
Right. It's a Hebrew word in the Torah. It means end times, the end.
Folks, you'll have to excuse this whole video because this is an Orthodox person, me, interviewing another very learned person, and he's not going to use English terminology. He's gonna use, terminology of the Torah, yeshiva, Hebrew, what we call yeshivish language. So
yeah. So after we're gonna play this interview, okay? Because I think there's enough English that for those who are really paying attention, you can make use out of it. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we're actually in future episodes, if Greg agrees, we're going to play clips from his personal videos that he made. He has 40 videos that he made only on this topic, which started around the time of the election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Remember back in 2020, right? And there he uses much more accessible English because he's reaching out to everyone. Okay, so let's continue.
Yeah.
People say, "Come on!" You know how many times we thought he's coming, so they give up. So they don't prepare properly. It's not really fair to us. We waited so long. We want to prepare. We want to put our house in order. We want to, make sure that when Mashiach comes, we're proud to greet him. Shalom Aleichem, Mashiach. What's your name? My name is Tzvi. What did you do to be Mashiach? I made podcasts. I learned Torah. I did mitzvos. I gave tzedakah. You don't want people to be caught off guard. They can embarrass even to greet Mashiach because I wasn't even ready. My service of Hashem is so deficient. I haven't learned a lot of Torah. So isn't it fair? So the Gemara says, Eliyahu is going to come a day before. Thank you. What are you going to accomplish in a day? That's not going to give us enough time. So obviously the book of Daniel was written for a reason, that several years before Mashiach comes, people will have access to the secret information that no one had access to before. So even though the great Rishonim, how do we say Rashi made a cheshbon calculation, the Ramban made a cheshbon, they were all wrong. So who are we, like simple people like me? Like where do you have the chutzpah? Who do you think you are? So the teretz is that now you're supposed to. In fact, the pasuk says itself. It says that Rashi says Yisparu v'Yislabdu. These things that were hidden will become clarified. It says Lo Yavinu Harashoyim. Evil people will try to figure. They won't have a clue what's going on. Hamaskilim Yavinu. But people that try to figure it out will be able to figure it out. And there's a fascinating passage in the Zohar. Actually, the Zohar says a very fascinating story that there were two students of the Rashbi, which Lag BaOmer, it's very appropriate to quote from the Zohar, and Shimon Bar Yochai. So this is in the Zohar in Book 1, page 118. It says a story. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda were two students of the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai.
Hey, I'm Excel, and I'm
They're once walking somewhere in Eretz Yisrael in the Galil, where that's where Shimon Bar Yochai, where he's buried, and where he taught Torah, right? And they're walking around, and they saw like a light coming out of a cave, and they walked into the cave, and they found this ancient book, and they started reading it, and it had like crazy, incredible secrets. And they were reading it and like amazing revelations and secrets, and suddenly a fiery hand came out of heaven and grabbed the book away. And they felt like, very saddened that somehow that Hashem, God saw them that they're not worthy to read this book and see all these secrets. So they went to their Rebbe, Rab Shimon, and they said, Rebbe, why was the book taken from us? We were reading such beautiful things and such beautiful ideas. He told him, you're about to get to the page where it says that when Mashiach is coming. That was one of the secrets in the book. And therefore, and you're not supposed to know that at this time. So the book was taken for you. But he says a very interesting quote. He says, when we are close to the time of the redemption, Rabbi Alma, Rabbi Alma literally means even children. I mean, people that are simple, people that are not that knowledgeable, not great Torah sages, just regular people like me, right? They will be able to figure out these ends. So therefore, there's a lot of people that are working now. A lot of people came to similar conclusions, completely different paths. But this was prophesied to happen in Daniel. He says people are going to do it, and he wants people to do it now, at this point in time. And the Zohar says it's even going to be simple people. So that's I just digress for a minute just to clarify that because people have their questions. So to answer your question, so how do we deal with these two time periods, the 1290 and the 1335? So Rashi says something very fascinating. He says that Mashiach is going to come twice. He brings down a medrash. It says Moshe Rabbeinu, when he came to Paro the first time, and he said, "Let my people go." Paro said, "Not only am I not listening to you, I'm going to make it worse." It says in Chumash, right? And at the end of Parashat Shmos, and Moshe Rabbeinu was very sad. He went to Hashem. He said, "Why'd you tell me to go to Paro? I made it worse." And then it says, Dasav Avir met him, and they were yelling at him. "What did you do? You made it worse. Who asked you to go to Paro?" Now he made it even harder for the Jewish people. He said he's not even going to give them straw. You remember that the way the Torah records over there? Yeah. So Moshe Rabbeinu was like they were gagging up on him, or with a canceling him, whatever, like you'd say in today's vernacular. So he ran away. He was being hassled and harassed by Dosan and Biram and their chevra, and he ran away for 3 months. And then he reappeared 3 months later, and then he continued with the Makkos. So the Medrash says just like Moshe Rabbeinu came and he disappeared, that Mashiach is going to come, he's going to disappear, but this time not for 3 months, for 45 years. So that's one thing Rashi says. So that's like a very interesting process because everybody thinks, the second coming is a Christian idea.
Yeah.
I remember once, this is going back a long time, after the Rebbe passed, the Lubavitcher Rebbe passed away in 1994. So there were some Lubavitchers, when he was alive, a lot of Lubavitchers thought that, if we merited, he would be the Messiah. After he passed away, most of the Lubavitchers realized it didn't work out, but some of them continued to believe that he was the Messiah, and he'd be resurrected and coming back. So there's this professor, his name is David Berger. He's a professor in Yeshiva University. They made him the Dean of Judaic Studies. So he wrote an article in Jewish Action, which is the OU magazine, and he wrote that this is Christianity and we have to fight it. And actually he devoted his life. Yeah. He wrote a book against it. I don't know. He's a very mediocre scholar. I don't know why you chose him. Excuse me. But I wrote an article then to rebuttal to him, also the Jewish Action, the Ness edition, and I told him the second coming is Christian. You don't have to be a great scholar and know like secret things. If you just learn Tanakh with Rashi, you'll see. And Medrash, Rashi says that there is a second coming in Judaism. It's a possibility. We don't know for sure, but it's a possibility. Yeah. But to my Lubavitcher friends, I tell them, you can believe what you want. It's not a problem. I mean, it's not a Christian belief. You want to believe the Rebbe is going to come back, you're welcome to do that. It doesn't make a difference. As long as you believe in Mashiach, he can come. God can do anything. God can resurrect him. Maybe whatever. That's not the issue. But the issue is you really want to put the Rebbe into this and say that the Rebbe came. First of all, when did he come? He never revealed himself. People thought and people talked about it, but the Rebbe never said, "I'm the Messiah." Yeah.
They claim that he said
he
said
gave
that.
Very hints that could be translated many different ways. He didn't say clearly. He didn't say that. Obviously, when the pasuk says Mashiach is going to come to all the Jewish people, he's going to proclaim it. Not that a few Lubavitchers are going to see in his words that he's kind of hinting maybe. He mentioned that Mashiach's name is Menachem because the Gemara says that's one of his names, and the Rebbe's name was Menachem. But it doesn't necessarily mean the Rebbe was referring to himself. But the biggest problem is, I tell them, my dear friends, believe what you want to believe, but you really want Mashiach to come 5 years after, 45, it's a 45-year period. So if we're going to say the Rebbe, when he was alive, was the first coming, that means you're pushing off Mashiach now, till like,
20, whatever.
Well, it's going to be not 2040 probably. Well, you took 45 years. The Rebbe passed away in 1994, so 45 years. You're pushing him off another 15 years.
Yeah.
So you really want to push that interpretation. Yeah. So that's one possibility. Rashi says. The Ramban says the Ramban has another interesting interpretation. Mm-hmm. There's a tradition about there are two messiahs. Mm-hmm. First, Mashiach ben Yosef is going to come, and people are going to think that he's Mashiach. But he's not going to succeed, and then Mashiach ben David is going to come. Yeah, so I have a video where I suggest that if the Rebbe was the Messiah, that he was Mashiach ben Yosef, not Mashiach ben David. So he was the first Messiah. So the Ramban says the first Messiah comes, and then he rules for 40 years. Interestingly, the Rebbe ruled for 40 years. He became Rebbe from 1951 to 1991. Then
I graduated with a bachelor's in pastoral theology, and I worked.
Then he suffered in 1992. He suffered a stroke, and then whatever. So the 40 years, the Ramban brings down from the Medrash. It says the Mashiach ben Yosef will rule for 40 years, and then why is it 45? The Ramban says because when Mashiach comes, we automatically assume that Mashiach comes like in a second. The Beis Hamikdash will be here. All our enemies will be gone. Everything will be beautiful. Everything will be miraculous. Everyone's going to be in Eretz Yisrael. Now, God can actually do whatever He wants, and He can make that happen if He wants instantaneously. But it's very likely, like the Rambam says, it's going to happen in a natural way. So Mashiach comes until somebody proclaims himself. Picture it: Mashiach, someone who proclaims himself comes to Eretz Yisrael, says, "I'm Mashiach." He has a following till the time he gets all the Jews to agree that he should take over Eretz Yisrael, become the prime minister or the king of the Jews. It's not going to happen overnight. B'derech hateva. According to, it's going to be a process. Then he has to get Jews to join him. Then he has to build a Beis Hamikdash. Now, just think in practical terms today. Somebody comes and says, "I want to destroy even when Jews, even when Jews come to the Temple Mount, just to visit the whole world,
Haredi Jews have a problem with it.
Haredi Jews have a problem because the halachic issues.
Yeah.
But the whole world has a problem. What are Jews doing on Temple Mount? It belongs to the Muslims. We're inciting we're responsible for all the murders that Arabs do against Jews because we have the chutzpah to visit the Temple Mount. So imagine if Mashiach says, "I'm visiting the Temple Mount. I'm going. We're sending the trucks." Demolition squad. We're destroying the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We're drawing up plans. It's a process. So hopefully he'll pull it off, right? Of course he'll pull it off. Yeah. But that's a process. So the Ramban says the process from when he announces he's Mashiach until he actually has the Beis Hamikdash up and running and be Makar Kabbanis and our enemies are off our case, 5 years. So that's the second shot. The third shot in these two numbers is the shot that I'm suggesting because I'm looking for an interpretation that fits with our types. So the interpretation of Rabbeinu Bachya, he mentions very simple that it's a window of time. So when we say that we talk about the Ketz means the end time, right? What does the end time mean? The time that God, when He created the world, He set a limit. I'm creating a world, and there's going to be a time period where the Jews are going to have to do, and the whole world is going to have to prepare for Mashiach by doing Torah mitzvahs. And once the world is ready, there's a sufficient amount of merit in the world to bring Mashiach. I'm going to bring Mashiach. Now, what happens if there's not enough merit? So it's going to take longer. But God has a plan, and the plan has to come to fruition. And the plan is that we should live in a perfect world, in a perfected world, in a world that's a peaceful world, in a world where everybody serves God in unison, where there's no wars and there's no famine and all this kind of stuff. So what happens if we don't merit? We all have free choice. So there's also an end time. So the end time is, this is the deadline. Ready or not, here I come. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, that preordained end time, is that a day? Does it say, like, for example, on Lag Ba'omer, Tafshin Pei Beis at 5:52? Is that, or is it a week? Is it a year? So, for example, we have precedents. In Mitzrayim, it says Hashem calculated that the time the Jews are going to be freed from Mitzrayim is going to be the second of Chatzos Halaylo. It was a second that it was preordained that night of Pesach, exactly at midnight, the Jews are going to go out. And when it came that time, Hashem didn't wait even a second. That was one. There was another preordained time that the Jews are going to return to build the second Beis Hamikdash after the Churban of the first Beis Hamikdash. It was a 70-year period. But that 70-year period was never, it wasn't fixed to the day or even the week. It's within a year, right? So now we see that the period of the end time is expanded. So what is the period of the end time for the last redemption? It's not a second, a week, a year. So the pasuk, Daniel is telling you there's a 45-year window when it starts, and during that time is extremely auspicious time for Mashiach. In other words, because we're ready in that time period where Mashiach is supposed to come. So what's the difference between the time period after the 1290 till the 3035? What changed? In other words, Mashiach didn't come. So what happened at the beginning of that window? So what happened is that in order to merit Mashiach should come before then, the Jews and the world need a lot of merit to bring Mashiach before that time. Once, this is what the Rebbe pointed out many times, not in this context of this window, I'll talk about that later, didn't say that explicitly, but when Hashem is ready to bring Mashiach, when the time period of the Ketz already is here, you don't have to do anything else. In other words, all the mitzvos and all the good deeds that had to be done to prepare the world for Mashiach were already done. We can't say Mashiach is not coming because I didn't do this mitzvah. The only thing you have to do is show your readiness that you want Mashiach to come. Because even when Mashiach is ready to come, right, God is not going to send Mashiach to people who don't want him. So we have to show that this is something that interests us, that Mashiach is something that we're yearning for, that we're dying to have Mashiach. So we have to ask for it and show that we're ready. So the preparation is much different during this window. We don't have to do anything to merit it. We have enough merit. Let's, for example, let's say I tell my kids that, you know what, if you kids, let's say over Pesach, if you guys help your mother clean for Pesach and cook for Pesach and everything like that, then on Chol Hamoed, I'm going to take you guys on an awesome trip. Okay, we're going to go,
Cranks a ball, deep left field, Volpe with
Canada's Wonderland, whatever, something amazing, right? So the kids do everything they have to do. And then it comes Chol Hamoed, right? And at this point, I can't say, you know what, I made a mistake, kids. I said if you help mom prepare for Pesach, but I also want you to today, I need also, I need you to make your bed, I need you to do this, I need you to do a bunch of other things. It's not fair. I already told them that all they need to merit it. So they don't have to do anything else. They already did what they have to do. They were, they did a great job in helping before Pesach, so they're getting this trip. However, if I wake up, let's say the first day Chol Hamoed, and I see all the kids are sleeping, I say, guys, you want to go on a trip? We're tired, wake us up in 2 hours. And then at the end of the day, they say, Ty, you said you're going to take us on a trip. I said, you guys weren't ready, you weren't interested, you're sleeping. And the same thing second day, third day, I'm ready to take you guys on a trip. Are you ready? Do you want to? Did you get up early? Did you daven? Did you prepare food for the way? So this is really, the period we are now is not, Hashem is not saying, guys, I need you to do one. We did so much, 2,000 years of Golus in exile, we did so much Mesiras Nefesh, so much self-sacrifice to be Jews, and all the mitzvahs we do. Hashem is not saying, I need you to do a little bit. No. I just want to see you guys are interested. So that's the thing. The Rebbe also pushed this very much. In the last years of his life, he was pushing guys, you got to really show Hashem that you're ready for it, that you're ready for this a completely new phase of Jewish history. That's the life you want to live. You're looking for a godly, spiritual, holy life. And you prove that by starting to live that way now. Okay, so that's the interpretation that I'm going with. That at this point in time is the only one that makes sense to me now, because Mashiach didn't come and get lost, so Rashi's interpretation is not working for our time period. As far as Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, like we mentioned before, so that's not working either. So we're going with the interpretation of Rabbeinu Bachya, which is the simplest interpretation that it's a window. So now we have to figure out when does it start. So this is something which to me was extremely obvious, and it's obvious why none of the Rishonim thought of it, because when the Navi talks about it, he says, it's a little tricky, his language. He says, Umeyes Husarat Tamid, from the time that the Tamid, the Korban Tamid, the sacrifice of the Tamid, was discontinued. And then it says, Veloses Shikush Shoimim, and an abomination was placed at 1290 years. So it's kind of tricky. So Rashi and the early commentators thought that it's really close in time period, because we said 6 years before the second temple was destroyed, the Romans forced the Jews to stop sacrificing animals, the sacrifices, right? Mm-hmm. Then the Shikut Shebim, that what is this abomination they're talking about? It wasn't right away. The Emperor Hadrian was a very, very evil man, and he's the one, for example, that saw after the rebellion, famous rebellion of Bar Kokhba, he saw that the Jews are very stubborn, and they can't come to terms with the fact that they don't have their own kingdom and that they're under the Romans, and they want to have their own independence, right? So this was the year, I think, about 140, the Common Era, where Hadrian said, I had enough of this. So after he quelled the Bar Kokhba rebellion, and he murdered hundreds of thousands of Jews, he decided, how do I crush, once and for all, let the Jews come, forget it, they're not getting Jerusalem, they're not getting Israel, they're not having their temple, they're not having their independence, they are Roman citizens, and let them come to terms with that it's over for them as an independent country. So I got to get it out of their minds. So first what I'm going to do is the Temple Mount. They see a Temple Mount with a broken temple, and they're always hoping, they see it and they want to rebuild it. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take away all the debris of the temple, right? And I'm going to make it all nice and flat, and I'm going to build a temple to the Roman god Zeus or whatever, is Jupiter or whatever, some Roman god. And now they're going to see like it's over. Temple Mount is not a holy place anymore. It's a place for pagan worship. Yeah. You know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to rename Jerusalem Lia Capitolona, which was after one of the hills in which ancient Rome was established, whatever. And then he said, I'm naming the land after their bitter enemies, their biblical enemies, the Palestinians, the Palestine. Mm-hmm. Today he named it Palestine. So that was that the Jews forget about Israel. It's not Israel anymore. It's Palestine. Forget about Jerusalem. It's a Roman city. Forget about the Temple Mount. So this is what he did. So Rashi learns that we count from the time that there was no carbon Talmud. Eventually, something else happened, which is not part of this count, and that's the pagan temple of Hadrian, because that happened well after the Churban, over 100 years after the Churban, and it's just throwing that in there that this is a desecration, but has nothing to do with the time period. That's how Rashi and the Rishonim learn. Again, because they wanted Mashiach. Everybody who calculates the case doesn't want to push it off, right? So if the Rishonim are standing in the 11th, 12th, 13th century, they don't want to push it further than they have to. So they don't want to start counting from Hadrian's pagan temple. They want to start counting from the Churban of the second Beis Hamikdash, or even Rashi pushed it back even 6 years earlier to get Mashiach to come as much earlier. Mm-hmm. But those calculations didn't work. So what is the obvious? I mean, if you think of there is an abomination on Temple Mount today. And it's Islamic. It's the Dome of the Rock. It was built. It was completed. There's an inscription on it in Arabic, and it says in the Arabic year of 72, which corresponds to the secular year of 692, is when it was completed. So obviously, standing now in time, in 2022. We need another starting point, and that's the obvious starting point. Yeah. So we're not counting from the Churban, we're counting from when that thing was established. Yeah. And it's very, very clear also, because I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it's so clear, because in the famous prophecy of the 2300 years, he says over there like this. He says, "Ad Mosei hachazayin hatomid va'pesha shemim teis." How long? If you read the verse carefully in chapter 8, verse 13, the Nielsen is saying, how long is that abomination going to be there? In other words, he's talking about, according to Rashi, that it speaks about Hadrian's temple. Hadrian's temple was destroyed by Constantine a few hundred years after it was built, because after Rome became Christian, they weren't interested in pagan temples, so that was destroyed. But the verse says clearly over here, how long is that abomination going to be on the Har HaBayis? So it's clear that he's not referring to that. I mean, for some reason, obviously, this was denied to the Rishonim because it was sealed and it wasn't accessible, this knowledge. But if you look at the pasuk, that's clearly what it's saying. It's saying that how long is it going to be there? It's going to be there till, and that's what we said the calculations, from either 1290 to 3035. At that, somewhere along that time period, it's going to be taken down by Mashiach.
But I have a question. I think Rambam even says Jews are allowed to daven in a mosque Like you're never gonna have what constitutes a Avodah Zorah in that place. Like I think Muslims are even more machmir on, like images and all these kind of things. So if you're saying abomination from a standpoint of just that there's something there that it's not the base.
Okay, so that's an excellent point. So when we're talking about the reason why you're allowed to daven in a mosque is because it's just a building. There are no idols there. So you're allowed to daven in a building with peoples of other faiths. If you have a building that's any kind of Chinese or Indian, if there's no Avodah Zarah there and they don't worship idols, the fact that people believe have a different faith system, it doesn't forbid us to going into that building, and it doesn't So
even a church.
Well, a church, because Christianity is problematic from a Jewish point of view, there are issues with a church. Yeah. But as far as the Muslims are concerned, they don't believe in any idols, and they don't have any images, and they don't believe in any of that. So therefore, as far as the halacha is you're allowed to daven over there, but that's as far as the building itself. But the Dome of the Rock is very unique. It has inscriptions. First of all, the Dome of the Rock, a normal church is not a message. Someone builds a church, Christians build a church on my block, good for them. They pray there. I encourage them, go pray in the church, I pray in the synagogue. It's not telling me anything. It's not telling you, hey, Jew,
I'm replacing you.
I'm a Christian, I don't believe in you. He says, no, I'm a Christian, you're a Jew. Fine, this is America. Live and let live. Yeah. So that's fine. They're not making fun of me by building a church. Not in our day and age. I mean, there were times when the Christians were very brutal to the Jews, but in our day and age, Christians are fine. So they're not telling me. The reason why the Muslims built that over there is a message. Hey, Jews, Muhammad came and he replaced your Bible. And Muhammad was very upset that the Jews didn't accept him because Muhammad went out of his way to make the Jews happy. He said, you know what? I'm the new prophet. I'm replacing Moses, and I want you guys to join me. And we're going to keep Shabbos, and we're going to keep Yom Kippur, and we're going to pray 3 times a day, and we could do all that stuff. I'm not really, join me. So the Jews said, absolutely not. So then he said, forget about you guys, forget about it. I'm not fasting Yom Kippur, but I'm going to outdo you. We're fasting a whole month of Ramadan, right? We're not celebrating Shabbos, but we're celebrating Friday. We're going to pray 5 times a day. Okay, we're going to outdo you, but the reality is a Muslim has to pray 5 times a day. He's allowed to pray for 1 minute. Our prayers take a lot longer. Whatever, that's a side point. Yeah. But you see, so Muhammad tried to change all these things. He was very, very upset with the Jews. So this was a statement that the Muslims were saying: this is your holy temple. This is the holy mount, the holy temple. You think Mashiach is going to come? It's not. It was a similar message that Hadrian tried to do with his pagan temple, to tell Jews, forget about any aspirations and hopes that you can ever reestablish a Jewish kingdom in Jerusalem on the Temple Mount. The Muslims were making the same message, that we are now the leaders, the faith leaders of the world, and if the Messiah comes, he's going to be a Muslim. So that's an abomination, because they're telling us that the Torah is wrong, our tradition is wrong. That and not only that, they're also being very disrespectful to Moshe, because we have a belief that it's one of the 13 fundamentals of our faith. Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest prophet. There's no prophet, Jew or non-Jew, who could ever override anything Moshe Rabbeinu said. And here they're saying that Muhammad is the true prophet. So these are the inscriptions that are all, if you look at the Dome of the Rock, you'll see all Arabic letters outside and also inside. If you see pictures of it, all these are saying that Islam is the true faith and not Judaism and not Christianity. So in a way, you're saying it's not a place where there's idols, in the sense, so you're allowed to, theoretically you're allowed to pray in such a building, but it is an abomination, because it's basically stating that Judaism is not true, Moses is not the greatest prophet, the Jewish Messiah is not going to be a Jew from the house of David, he's going to be a Muslim. So it is, in a sense, similar, just like an idol denies God. This building denies the truth of Torah in other ways. It doesn't deny the existence of God, but it denies the eternity of our Torah. So that's why it's called the. But it's also interesting. I just want to point out something. Why this interpretation is I have no doubt that it is, because in chapter 7, where he talks about the famous prophecy of the 4 beasts. Mm-hmm. So the 4th beast, chapter 7, so the 4th beast, which represents Rome. I don't want to go into the detail. I speak about it in some of the videos. There's this. It had 10 hordes, and then there's another conspicuous horde that grows out of it. And it says over there that this horn on the 4th beast, which was Rome, which destroyed the Second Temple, it says that this this horn had eyes like human eyes, and a mouth speaking haughty words. Okay, and it attempted to change. This is in verse number 25, and it says, "He will alter the seasons and the law." So, what is it talking about? You're talking about a human horn, okay, a human horn that's very haughty, and he attempts to alter the seasons and the law, verse 25, right? And it will be given over into his hand until a times and a half. That's the case we mentioned earlier, that 2.5 times. Harashi made the calculation of 2.5 times equals 1335, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
So it says that this horn is going to be in control until the time of the end. So what is it talking about? So the Rambam said, who is this horn? He says that this was Islam. Because why do we say that it was a human horn? Because Islam is very, very close to Judaism.
Yeah.
In the sense, much closer. I mean, today the Christians are much closer to the Jews than. Well, there are much more cruel Muslims than there are. There are plenty of anti-Semites who are Christians, but by and large, most of the Christian world is not nearly as bad as a significant part. I'm not saying there's a lot of very good Muslims out there also. I'm not painting them all one bush, but there's a lot of very bad Muslims, very evil Muslims. There's some evil Christians too, but not nearly as many, right? So, but we're saying that in a sense, Islam itself, you just take the pure religion itself, is very close to Judaism. So we call it human, but it was very arrogant because he says he's speaking that he's going to say, Muhammad, the Jewish people are around, since the time of Abraham, and now you, a non-Jew, are telling us what to do, and now you want to become our new leader, and if we don't, you're really upset with us. And he killed out many Jews that in his day, and I mean, exactly who do you think you are? I'm saying you're coming to us and telling us that you know better than our prophets, and you're replacing everything. That's extremely arrogant. So this horn, which is very arrogant, and then he decided to say, I'm changing the times. So instead of Yom Kippur, it's Ramadan. Instead of Shabbos, it's Friday. So the Rambam says this horn, which Daniel is told, he will hold on to the Temple Mount until 2.5 times, which Rashi says is 1335. The Rambam says clearly, he has a letter called Igeres Teman, the letter to the Jews of Yemen. This is how he interprets the verse. So that's why this starting point of we said it's 1982 basically. So if you count 1290 years, Fub 692. You're going to get to 1982, the Hebrew year of Tafshin Beis. So that was the starting point of this window, which is a 45-year window, which is going to end in and around 2027. It's the Jewish years. It's not exactly the same, but it's the Jewish year starts at 3 months before around 3 months before the secular year. So, but it's the Hebrew year of Tafshin Pei Zayin, which is 5,787, which roughly corresponds to 2027. That's the. So it's basically, I just want to put, there's a lot of different calculations that many people are doing, and they're very interesting. We can talk about it if you want to. The other ones, some of them are very interesting, the calculations that they make. But when you want to calculate the first place to go, what's the first place to go? First place to go is to Daniel, because he was told the end. And the first place to try to understand Daniel is in Rashi. So that's why we're using Rashi's interpretation as much as we can. We're just changing the starting point, because Rashi's starting point from the destruction of the Second Temple didn't manifest. So therefore, we have to change the start. This is the only logical other. There's no other. What else could it be? What abomination is on the Temple Mount? There's nothing. What was built here? Nothing was built here from the time of the Churban. There was the church. There was the temples of Hadrian, the Temple of Hadrian, and then there was the two things. So it's one or the other. So that's why this case, I think, is just. It's just extremely convincing that this was the case. Now, there are many other cute hints. For example, I'll just share one with you that somebody, a friend of mine from Lakewood, told me. It was very interesting. There's an interesting tradition from the Vilna Gaon, the Gra. For those who listen to know who he is, he's one of the greatest Jewish sages in the last probably 1,000 years. So he's lived about 250 years ago. So he brings out, one of his students, he doesn't write it, but one of his students brings out a tissue for him that the the verses in the by looking at verses in the Torah, in the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Devarim, the last book of the 5 books of Moses, you could see that various verses correspond to historical things that happened. If you count the verses, in other words, so a verse, let's say, that corresponds to 1948. If you look at that verse,
Dad is a legend.
It's if you look at verse number 5,708, which corresponds to 1948, when the Jews started coming back there to Israel.
Oh, like the Hebrew year. Okay.
Yeah, so verse number 5,708 in the Bible, in the 5 books of Moses, corresponds, that verse, to the Jewish year of 5,708, which corresponds to the secular year 1948.
Wow.
What does that pasuk say? Now, it's a pasuk in the Torah portion of Nitzavim. Look what it says. It says, "Shav Hashem Elokecha Shavuscha," God will bring you back. God will bring you back from all the nations which you were spread. It's exactly 1948. Like you could count it today on a computer. I mean, it's just there. So this was known. This was known. But my friend Lakewood told me that if you count, when he saw my video about the 2027, he said, you know what? I counted in the Chumash, and to verse 5,700, so that's 5,787.
Yeah.
And you said that's the end time. The end time is the most secret thing in the world, because it was told to Daniel, he was told to keep it secret. Nobody figured it out until today. So what does the verse say? It says, the verse is talking about the end time. It's a verse in the Torah portion of Hazinu, in Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 32. It says over there, Haloihu kamasi madi. The secret of the end is hidden with me. Chosum ba'yitzraisai. I have it sealed in my storehouses. So that's exactly the verse that's saying that. It's crazy, because the verse that's saying that the end time is concealed is the verse that reveals the case, because that verse is exactly 2027. So this is from my friend Rabbi Gluck from Lakewood. Anyway, so that's very interesting. But these are interesting things, and there's a lot of other interesting calculations that people made. But I think the most straightforward way is, what does it say in Daniel? There's no other way of interpreting this verse about this abomination on the Temple Mount.
I just want to ask you.
That was a long answer to your question.
No, it's okay. It's totally okay. I guess I'll ask you a couple more questions, and we'll.
Yeah, you could ask whatever you want.
You mentioned in another video that the Rebbe actually, everything you just said, the Rebbe concurred with this, supposedly, and he asked someone to publicize it. But it says, basically, we know that nobody in Lubavitch apparently seems to be aware that he said this, or that he asked somebody to publicize it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. As you know, the Rebbe was like very, very, dying for Mashiach, and he kept on talking about Mashiach, especially in the later years as he was getting older. In the 1980s, in the early 90s, he was always talking about it. He feels it, and he sees it. He says he feels it in the air. Mashiach is about to come. So this was like his life. But he started really, it's interesting, what he took on the leadership of Chabad, so like his official inaugural address was on the Jewish date of Yud Shvat, which is the 10th of Shvat. That's the yahrzeit of his predecessor, the previous Lubavitch Rebbe. And that's a year after he passed away. He officially took it on in 1951. And basically his leadership was about 40 years, right? So he said in his inaugural address that my goal, in other words, he's giving you want me to be the leader of Chabad. Let me tell you what I want to accomplish. What's my mission statement? Yeah. What is my mission statement? We are going to prepare the world for Mashiach. Mashiach is going to come in our generation, and we're going to do everything together possible. And that's what the Rebbe started, this major campaign to bring Torah mitzvahs to all parts of the world. Because when Mashiach comes, really, it's a change of the entire world. The entire world becomes a godly place. We have a tradition that eventually all the nations of the world are going to be allied with Israel, and Mashiach is going to be not only the king of the Jews, but the king of all mankind, and everything is going to be like an extended land of Israel, right? And in order to prepare every inch of the world with holiness, so the Rebbe sent shluchim all over the world to reach out, to build up, to find Jews and even non-Jews to bring them closer to God. So that was his mission statement. But he never really spoke. But then he just went on to do his thing of, encouraging people to spread Torah, do mitzvahs, learn Torah, do everything that Jewish leaders do. And he never really got back to his original mission statement. Okay, how are we doing today? Yeah. Okay, remember I told you 1951 we're going to bring Mashiach. Like 20 years later, how we're doing? He sort of never got back to it. He just was busy building.
There were never like official updates.
There was no updates as far as on that note. I mean, he was just building Chabad and encouraging people and spreading all over the place, and schools and Chabad houses and shuls, all the things that Lubavitch is famous for. He was just working nonstop to get as many things going on and get as many people closer to God, and even reaching out to non-Jews. So that was, and then suddenly, in Tafshin Mem Beis, he says, he announces that if you take the letters of Tafshin Mem Beis, which is Hebrew word of 5,742, which corresponds to 1982, we could spell the words Tehei Shnat Bias Mashiach. This should be the year of Bias Mashiach. Wow. So the Rebbe is saying, finally he's saying, you know what? We said we're going to prepare the road for Mashiach. Let it happen this year. He never said it. He didn't say it the year before. He never said it before. So now he's saying like there's something going on here that maybe it's this year.
There's a window.
There's a window here. But nobody interpreted it this way. He's saying, okay, then it didn't happen. Then Tafshin Mem Gimel, he said it didn't happen that year. Maybe it happened this year. He tried to put words into each of the things. Okay, so Tafshin Mem Beis, the Rebbe is saying for the first time, let it happen now. Okay, I said it's going to happen. We prepare for Mashiach. I think we did enough. Let Mashiach come this year. Yeah. Okay, but he never said that it is going to happen. Sure. It's sort of like a prayer to Heshnas. In other words, God, can you make this happen?
Should, yeah.
So it's the very fact that he started this prayer this year and not the year before means now he saw that the window was really open, and if we ask for it, it's going to happen. But then there's something very interesting that nobody picked up on, and this is a book called Hayom Yom, and a lot of Chabad Lubavitch Hasidim read this every day. The Rebbe wrote this, I think, in 1943. The previous Rebbe asked him to do it. He wanted something that people could read for 30 seconds in the morning to give you some inspiration, or to teach you some knowledge or some Jewish law or something about customs of Chabad. Most of it is inspirational. Yeah. And for every single day of the year, there's like a 3-line, 2 lines, 4 lines, something. And in the introduction, he decided he's going to put a very short biography of all the leaders of Chabad. That means from the time of the first leader of Chabad, which was the Baal HaTanya, the Shnei Zalman, and then all of them until his father-in-law. And he wrote like a page or 2 pages each one. And then there's a rabbi in Crown Heights. His name is Rabbi Zelickson, Rabbi Michal Zelickson. So he decided in 1982 that he wants to put out a nice updated edition with footnotes explaining what it means, showing the sources, because the Rebbe took these from various sources in the works of the previous Rebbe. So he wanted to show the sources, also explain things, to make it a really nice, beautiful edition. The original edition didn't have all the footnotes, and it wasn't so easy to read. So then he asked the Rebbe, I'm putting out a brand new edition. I would like to update the biography to include, the Rebbe obviously didn't write about himself. When he published it was only about the previous Rebbe, right? So now I want to update it to bring it up to date to the current date to 1982. So he asked the Rebbe, he says, I'm going to write like what I think a biography of what you accomplished in your life, short, and I'm going to give it to you, to edit, to see, to correct, because I want it to be factual. So he did just that. He wrote the biography, he updated it. It hadn't been written. It hadn't been updated in many years, and he added what he thought he should add, and he gave it to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe added things, changed things, and stuff like that. But this came out in 1982. What was very odd is that in this is the introduction, right? These are the pages of the introduction. Yeah. Okay, and this is the very, very last page. Yeah. So he's giving it to the Rebbe, and it's right before he's actually giving it to Rebbe on the Rebbe's anniversary. Rebbe's anniversary was on the 14th day of Kislev.
Marriage anniversary.
Marriage anniversary, where he married, and it's really, in a sense, the day which made him Rebbe, because if he wouldn't have married the daughter of the previous Rebbe, it wouldn't have been. Okay, yeah. So this is before Chanukah. It's Yudal Kislev. It's right before Chanukah, and he's giving it to him. And the Rebbe adds, something very interesting. He says that my accomplishments for this year is that I was ma'orer. That means I encouraged everybody to prepare for Mashiach, because it says in many books that the year Tafshim Membeis, which was that current year corresponding to 1982, is the year of the Kates. He told him to write that. So Rabbi Zelig is very bewildered because the Rebbe never, he's telling him, he's writing his own biography. The Rebbe is saying, this is what I accomplished for 1982. I encourage people to prepare for Mashiach because it says in Sfarim, in plural in Sfarim, that Mashiach is coming this year.
Greg,
Rabbi Zelig, who knew every single talk that the Rebbe gave that year and every letter that he wrote, publicized, he's.
I apologize. I couldn't.
I'm terribly sorry to wake.
That's the first time I heard. That's the first time I know. I wasn't listening. That's the first time I heard. When you yelled, were you muted?
No. I said Greg at like a couple of different volumes.
Oh,
and then
I just simply didn't hear you.
And then for a moment I thought you were possibly sleeping.
No, not at all. I literally did not hear you.
Okay, I just want to say a couple of very quick things. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, I want you to rewind this 20 seconds. This is for those who are listening. This is quite astonishing to me. I think this is probably, on a personal level, the most astonishing piece of information on earth. I swear that to me, this is the most astonishing piece of information on earth right now. What we just heard, okay, about what the Rebbe told Rabbi Zeligson to write in this 1982 edition of Hayom Yom. Okay, I just want you to rewind that to like 30 seconds. Or maybe even 30 seconds if it's possible. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to add that, folks, I know that some of you listening are having trouble, or maybe you've given up already. This is a very advanced conversation that even and I haven't heard this for the first time. I need to. This is a conversation that, like, let's say scholars.
Yeah.
If you go and you'd hear like a private conversation between scholars who are very familiar with a topic that they would have with each other. So in that sense, it's esoteric, not in the sense that it's trying to hide something, that it's some kind of like.
Yeah.
It's just that there's a certain level of familiarity that people who are experts in a topic will say to each other. This is what it sounds like.
Not just topic, terminology, sources,
right? And even like they won't even, sometimes they won't even like finish a sentence. Like they just kind of like know, you know what I mean? So
there's acronyms and there's like
and even like sometimes like you like you'll mutter, you'll begin like a famous phrase, you won't even finish it because you know what the guy's talking about.
It's kind of like I thought he was going to say, the Rebbe's first speech is commonly known in Chabad as Basi Legani, right? But Basi Legani is the beginning of a sentence which was then turned into a book. It's literally a book that people study.
Right. So this is a very
it even became a song by Zusha.
So those of you listening and those of you who feel like you're having trouble, it's understandable.
Yeah.
And like I'm gonna have to like re-listen to this interview over and over again.
Yeah.
Just to kind of like review. But the good news is like this. We're starting with this for a reason. Like, basically we're starting this topic. It's kind of like a new series of discussions, right, on this topic. We're starting at the very top, at the most advanced or the most detailed level of this discussion that's publicly available, and which is represented by this very discussion that you're watching. Then after this, in future episodes, we're going to come back with his video series where he is not like this at all, where he is literally talking to all of us like we're potatoes, starting and he's not using these terms. He's like literally starts from kindergarten, and he speaks to one of the amazing things about this particular rabbi is that he's very American sounding, and he speaks very clearly, and if he wants to, and he does in his own personal videos.
By the
not
way,
in this interview.
By the way, you know why, Frank? Because with his personal videos, he makes it's script, meaning he draws a script, and it's almost like he's reading from a teleprompter. Here, he's answering me. You could tell he's answering me on the fly.
Yeah,
that's why he sounds like he's a little bit. It's literally like a discussion between, in a yeshiva where he's just kind of like trying to put pieces of the puzzle together in his mind, and it's not, it's not like questions he expected. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You expected the general theme, but you're not expecting specific things.
Right. So on his YouTube channel, he has exactly what you just said.
Correct.
On his YouTube channel, he has like, I don't know what, like 47 videos.
A lot of videos
on this series, and all of them are prepared like less than like like they're pre-scripted, and everything is like very, very organized. And he speaks clear English. Luckily, unlike a lot of other rabbis, okay,
exactly.
You know what I mean.
Yep.
I don't know what his educational background was, but it had to. But obviously, part of it had to do with speaking English properly.
Correct.
Okay, which is unfortunately not every single Orthodox Jewish person goes through that. Okay.
Yep.
And so, I don't want anybody to worry if you're lost. Good, fine. Just stick it out. Right. And then if you stick it out and you're like, okay, so what did I just listen to? You retain little pieces, little patchworks here and there. Once we're done with this series of conversations, which is going to go on for a long time, you'll be like, and then you're going to revisit this episode that we started, right? Where we play this interview. It's all going to come together.
Yeah.
So it's this is a very ambitious thing that we've just undertaken.
Yeah.
And bless us to succeed.
Especially everything that's going on. I mean, everything again, especially the fact that people on Twitter are talking about the year 2027 all of a sudden. When we say all of a sudden, we mean the last 6 months.
Correct. And then all the UFO people switch from it's aliens to it's angels.
Yeah.
And spiritual beings.
Yep.
Okay. And now there's this like monumental rift between these two important figures on the world stage, and we gotta get spiritual. We gotta get serious in order to kind of ride this out. So okay, so if you can just rewind this back.
Yeah, I did.
But okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Tufshim Membeis, which was that current year, corresponding to 1982, is the year of the Kates. He told him to write that. So Rabbi Zelickson is very bewildered because the Rebbe never. He's telling him, he's writing his own biography. The Rebbe is saying, "This is what I accomplished for 1982. I encourage people to prepare for Mashiach because it says in Sfarim, in plural in Sfarim, that Mashiach is coming this year." So Rabbi Zelickson, who knew every single talk that the Rebbe gave that year and every letter that he wrote, publicized, he's wondering, the Rebbe didn't publicize. So he's saying, well, maybe he's telling me this because in this year, this is a biography for the year. It's not by the day. It's for the whole year of 1982.
Frank, do you know what movie was made in 1982? Or came out in 1982?
Ghostbusters? No, that came out later.
E.T.
Yeah. Okay, I knew it was something like that. Also, 1982, like I was 1 in 1982, so it would make it kind of would be a beautiful symmetry just in my life personally, just for me personally, that from the time I was born, which is already when Mashiach had arrived, to the time I'm going to become 45. Like I just turned 44. So I'm going to be 45 during this period. So, but so it would just be amazing that 45-year period between
Yeah.
1290 and 1335, those two numbers
Yeah.
from the book of Daniel, that precisely that's that 45-year period that Mashiach kind of comes, sort of hides, and then reveals himself again.
Yeah.
So in some sense, it kind of feels like that would make sense.
Yeah.
For how obsessed I am with the topic.
Yes.
All right, so
maybe the Rebbe means that that's what he plans to do. And so he's telling me now to write it in because we're going to publish this now, but maybe in 2 months from now he's going to publish that this is the year of the Kates, right? So he's telling me to write it now because this is going to be one of my topics in 1982. 1982 goes by. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
So what's going on? So he when I called him, when I realized it was happening, a couple of months ago, I called him. I said, "You have any clue what the Rebbe meant?" He says, "No." I said, "I have no clue." So I told him what I think. So it's very, very interesting. A few weeks after that, there was an interesting Jew that was. It's a very interesting story. If you have time, if the listeners have time, I think it's a video number 26 of mine. It's a very interesting story how this happened. But there was a Jew who was hanging around 770, and he wasn't even a Lubavitcher. But he happened to come across an interesting sefer, and the sefer was called Varnitzav. And it was just an obscure sefer that was very not known, and this Jew happened to pick it up at his farm store. It looked interesting to him.
This is your brain when you're struggling.
And in this book, the author makes a calculation. His name was Rav Toli Tzvi Brach. It was a kasha called a kashui Rav. He was so he writes over there. He has a calculation of Mashiach is coming, and he says it's going to be in Tafshin Ben Beis. So this Jew who was hanging around 770, his name was Rebendel Pshebish. His name was. He wasn't even Lubavitcher, but most of his kids are Lubavitch. So he heard everybody talking. The Rebbe saying this year is Mashiach coming because the Rebbe was saying the Heish Das B'Yas Mashiach. Everybody's singing that. They started singing that we want Mashiach now. The Mashiach is in the air. So he comes across this obscure sefer in his farm store somewhere, and he opens up and he says over there that Mashiach is coming Tafshin Ben Beis. So he sent it to the Rebbe. This was a few weeks after Zellingson got this direction from the Rebbe to put in his biography that he's publicizing it, but the Rebbe didn't publicize it at all. So Zellingson, when I spoke to him, he said, the Rebbe didn't seem to publicize it. I said, but in a way you're wrong, because this is an essay on Parshas Vayechi that came out a few weeks after, very soon after he told you he's publicizing it. It happened to be that some Jew happened to find some sefer from an unknown Rav who says that Mashiach is coming in Ben Beis, and the Rebbe decided to include it in a footnote at the end of a Sikha. Now, nobody took note of this because the Rebbe is bringing from a sefer who we don't even know who the guy is.
The Rebbe knew that this was going to come his way.
So I said, could it be that the Rebbe, this is how he publicized it. He included a footnote that it says in a sefer, but then it struck me very odd. The Rebbe is talking about major accomplishments every year. I built this institution, and this yeshiva, this Chabad house. I made a whole big tumult about this and about that, about major things. And the Rebbe is talking about a list of my accomplishments, for 1982 is what? That there's going to be a footnote in an essay that's going to be published in a few weeks, where I'm going to mention this obscure sefer from somebody who nobody knows about. Like, that's, wow, everybody's...
Non-Lubavitcher guy.
So Lubavitcher didn't even take notice of who's this guy, who cares? Like we just say, I mean, he's a Chashav Yid, he was a very holy Jew, but just it didn't relate to anybody. And nobody took note of this. So I told him, this is how you publicize Mashiach is coming this year? By putting a footnote at the end of an essay that no one's going to read, nobody notices, no one really cares about. And I said, it's also interesting is that the Rebbe said, he told him, it says in Svarim, it says plural. You see, the Rebbe is very, very meticulous in his writing. He's very, very, when he writes things, every letter or every essay that the Rebbe wrote, he's very careful with every word. So he says, the kama svarim, he stresses, that means at least 2. Kama is plural. So was he referring to this note that was really very surreptitiously publicized? And he says, Betty's from, what's the other sefer? So I suggested to him that the other sefer is a very chashuv a sefer, that everybody is a sefer Daniel, because the 1290 starts in that year in 1982. But the question is, why did the Rebbe tell anybody? So my answer is very, very simple. Let's say in 1982 the Rebbe is moving on in his years. Okay, so the Rebbe is like getting, he's in his 80s, and he's telling guys that he's telling them, let's daven for Mashiach. But by the way, it's very possible Mashiach's not going to come till 2027. I'm not going to be around there because it's a b'derech hateva. I'm not going to be around there, but it'll be good. Don't worry about it.
By natural means.
What?
No, b'derech hateva.
B'derech hateva, right? By natural means. So it doesn't make sense if I'm guessing now that the Rebbe is not going to publicize that now a 35-year window opened up. And if you guys get your act together, it can happen any time. So let's get your act together. But Mashiach might not come till 2020. Like, even when people hear my videos, they said it was so depressing. I said, why is it depressing? They said, it's 2022. You said Mashiach is not coming till 2027. I said, I didn't say he's not coming. I said, that's the end time. That's the latest. He could come today. But when someone hears an end time, right away their mind is, we ended 2,000 years ago. I'm sure we're going to have to wait till the end. That's people's attitude. So the Rebbe's going to say, you know what? We just opened the window now, but it might take till 2027. He didn't want, but he wanted, when it gets close to that window, the 35-year window, he wanted somebody to snoop around, and maybe they'll find this hint, and then they only have a couple of years. They're not going to push it off and say, I have 3-4 years is not a time. So the Rebbe sort of did it in a way that no one's going to pick this up now, but maybe in the future, the Rebbe saw that.
This is a major Lahav deal, and Frank will appreciate this. There was a movie in the 80s came out, a very popular, famous movie called The Goonies. And one of the things, you probably didn't see this movie, these kids in an attic found it's like a treasure map, and it was like all these remuzim clues that was left by this guy, this pirate, and you had to go here and go there. And it's one of those things where, like, there was one other person, old man, who found it some years before, in the 30s or something like that, and he finally got to some point in that map, again, figuring out all these riddles and this and this and this. He ended up dying, but it was one of those things. It's interesting, right, that he ended up dying, right? He did the calculation and he died. Right. But these kids, they went through this whole journey. In the movie, they went through this whole journey, and then they got to the end, and it was just.
So this is interesting. So
very
that's what I'm saying. The Rebbe sort of left a map here for us,
Yeah.
and he said, I hope someone's going to find this. Might be Baruch, Kodshe, whatever. He saw that someone was going to find it. But another thing, the Rebbe also left another that people didn't pick up. Then the Rebbe started saying that in order to prepare for Mashiach, we need Jews to be ba'achdus, unified. Now, everybody knows that's a Herculean messianic task to get two Jews to agree on one thing. Everyone says 2 Jews, 3 opinions, right? It's 2 Jews living at an island. They have 3 synagogues. The third one is one that we don't step into. That's a famous joke. So to get Jews, the Rebbe said, it says, God will give us blessing if we're united. How are we going to unite all the Jews? You're going to unite the Litvish, the Chassidish, the Lubavitch, and Satmar, and Mukach, and Skver, and modern Orthodox, and Mizrahi, and Tzionim. Like, are you kidding? Like, a lot of these people wouldn't sit in the same room together. So the Rebbe said, I have an idea. What's common denominator of all Jews, even secular Jews, even atheist Jews, is we respect the Torah. So let's work together to write a Torah scroll. Because we have different interpretations, we different things we stress in the Torah, but we all believe the Torah is sacred. So if we could have projects where we need more Torah scrolls around, because the shuls don't have enough. We need more Torah scrolls, and then when Mashiach comes, there'll be millions of more Jews that want Torah scrolls. So it's good to populate the world Torah scrolls. But instead of just having a few people start a committee and raising the money, let's get the whole Klal Yisrael involved in one project. So he had a very simple idea. He said, he asked his Chassidim to go around, knocking on doors, every kind of Jew, from Satmar to secular, everybody in between. Knock on door and say, we're writing a Torah scroll. A Torah scroll has a little 300,000 letters, a little over 300,000 letters. Would you want to donate $1 to this project? Who's going to say no? $1, a Torah scroll? A Torah scroll is a good thing. $1 is not a lot of money, so it's easy to do. So what the Rebbe did was, he said, this way we're at least Hashem will see there's one thing that we're unified, and that's the Torah. So when Mashiach comes and he teaches us the right, there's not going to be any fights anymore, because Mashiach will tell you, your interpretation, it's not correct. Yours is. Okay, Mashiach, we submit, right? The Sanhedrin is going to come. There's not going to be any fights anymore. What the proper way is, because the Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court, the Jewish Supreme Court establishes. But we want to show beforehand that when it comes to the Torah God, we submit. So that was a very nice project. Okay, beautiful. So the Rebbe wants to prepare for Mashiach. Again, this year, Tav Shivat Beis, he's saying, because the window was, he didn't say clearly, there's a window now, but he's doing things that Mashiach can come now. Yeah. We want to do something. Let's show Hashem that we want Mashiach. Let's show Hashem that we're unified. Let's do the Torah scrolls, okay? But he says something, he said it in Farbrengen in Hanukkah, which is shortly after this incident with Zelix had happened. In the last chapter in Daniel, it talks about these two time periods of 1290 and 1335. So if you look just at the beginning of that, it says like this. It says that, this is chapter 12. It says that he's talking to this angel.
This is Pod 5.
And angel the Michael is saying, and he says at that time, it says Michael, who is the one who always fights for Klal Yisrael. Whenever there's a decree in heaven against the Jews, Michael comes and argues to protect the Jews. So he says, Michael Hasar Hagod Lo Omer Al Bnei Amcha, the great angel who always stands up for the Jewish people, is going to stand up at that time. We're talking about the time of the redemption, because the next verses talk about the 12th day and 35. So at that time, this angel Michael is going to stand up to God, and he's going to tell God, you have to protect the Jewish people, because the wars of Armageddon are occurring, and the wars of Armageddon are Eist Tzara Shalei Niyasa Miyez Goy Ada Esahi. The verse says that during the wars of Armageddon, which happened right before Mashiach comes, it's the most terrifying experience and tzara that the Jews ever experienced. Now, if you think about the tzaras that we experience, there's no end. I'd say you could write a book about it, but so many people wrote books about it. I'm not already talking about the Holocaust, which is just incomprehensible. But before that, also the pogroms and the Inquisition and the expulsions from one country after the crazy how much we suffered. The Churban Beis Hamikdash, when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the first and the second, each time talking about millions of Jews were massacred. First by the Babylonians, by the Romans. We went through crazy suffering that you can't even begin to imagine. And now you're telling me you can't compare this tzara. So that means the wars of Armageddon are talking about a war, and you can think in your mind now what this means. I mean, we're talking about a nuclear war, which is so terrifying, because when the Romans are coming, destroying the temple and killing Jews are running away. Some Jews are dying. Some Jews, they don't get everybody. They don't get all the Jewish people. All the Jews weren't even around then. Yeah. So many Jews ran away. Many Jews weren't in Jerusalem. Unfortunately, close to 1 million Jews were killed, but there were millions who survived. They weren't even around. But here you're talking about, God forbid, a nuclear war against Israel. You have 6 million Jews in a tiny little place. It's horrific. Yeah. So I'm just saying how to translate it in the modern times, how there could be a scenario which is more scary. So the Rebbe didn't say this part, but he says that what does Michael say? He's coming to God and he says that the wars of Gog and Magog is a terrible time. And Michael is telling God, let's save the Jewish people. So Michael says, Yibolit Amcha Kol Hanimtza Kosav B'Sefer. This is how the Rebbe interpreted this. It's not the simple interpretation. And this was right after he told him about Tav Shivat Beis, about 1982. Yeah. He says, this is how we're going to interpret the verse. We're going to say, Amcha, the Jewish people, Hanimtza Kosav B'Sefer, that are connected to the book. What's the book? The book of books is the Torah, 5 books of Moses. So the Jews that are written, you can't write a Jew's name in a book. You're not allowed to write it in a Sefer Torah, right? What you could do is, how do you get a Jew to connect to a book is, when a Jew gives $1 and he says, I'm buying a letter in the book, and then the Rebbe said, send everybody a certificate and tell them which letter. You purchased this letter in this verse in this Torah portion. So basically you're linking the Jew to that letter in the Torah. So all the Jews, now they made a massive campaign. They wrote dozens of Torahs and millions of Jews participated in this. I don't know if they got everyone, but they got almost everybody. So Michael is saying, look at the Jews love you and the Jews love Torah, and you see when it comes to a Torah project, everybody is. So the Rebbe said this is happening now, that if we write these Torah scrolls, Michael, instead of, so the Rebbe is saying, because we're opening now the window of the Ketz, it's starting right now, So then what happens during this time period? Wars of Gog and Magog. So now we have to preempt it by giving Michal something to bring to God and say, protect the Jews. And the thing that we're bringing is this project. So the Rebbe didn't say it in those words. He didn't say that the next verse talks about the end.
Yeah.
He didn't link it. He just said, he didn't even say this refers to Gog and Magog. Nobody even looked it up, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like Lubavitcher heard the Rebbe said, you should write a letter to Sefer Torah. It says it will be good for it to Sefer Torah. Why shouldn't we be good? What are they talking about? Nobody even opened up the book.
He didn't want to freak people out.
He didn't mention it, and it's interesting. Nobody put it together, and nobody said, "What do you mean? What's he talking about? Protect from what? Gog and Magog? Why is Gog and Magog?" So this is another clue that just a few weeks after this happened, like the Rebbe is giving this clue, but nobody picked it up until now. Yeah. But now it's pretty obvious that this was a start date, and we're getting close.
Well, so I'm gonna ask, I guess the last question is maybe a two-part question, and then we'll wrap up. So there's another, I guess, calculation or method. A lot of people talk about what it says in the Zohar. That it talks about Tiyas HaMesim, resurrection of the dead, will occur either 210 years or 214 years before 6000, which corresponds obviously to 2026 or 2030 respectively. Does everybody who holds by this, do people agree with this interpretation? Like where do people hold on this? Where is this in the whole spectrum? And also kind of the last part of that question, are you concerned about publicizing all of this? If it's, it might end up being dangerous. If your calculations are incorrect, let's say, Chas v'shalom, people might lose hope, become disillusioned, like you said. Who knows what that could bring? Why would you want to put yourself in that position? It's a big, responsibility.
Right. So. To answer the first question, there's a lot. It's very. There are many kitzim, like end time predictions that are mentioned throughout the holy books. In the Zohar itself has many of them, and the Gemara has many of them, and the Midrashim have many of them. And like I said, if we go on to the Geonim and the Rishonim and the Achreinim, all the Jewish sages, there are many of them. Yeah. So I don't want to discourage anybody from looking for different ones. Rabbi Hul, I think did you interview?
I didn't interview him, but he's one of the people that were, I guess, referencing what he says.
So he has a very interesting case about the 2300 years. So that's I'm not going to go into that. Sure. I think that's pretty brilliant what he did, and he figured it out that it's going from when Nehemiah built the thing. Yeah, I think that's pretty brilliant, and good for him. Like I mentioned before, it says the lashon of the Zohar that I quoted you earlier. It says that many people are going to try to figure out the ketz, and they'll find kitzin v'chushbin. Kitzin is plural. They'll find different calculations. So there's not only one way to get the thing. Sure. But this Zohar thing, I'm not really so impressed with, because it's two views in the Zohar. People are arguing that the tzaddikim are going to be resurrected before everybody else. Now, it's not a consensus opinion at all. It's two opinions in the Zohar that Mashiach it doesn't talk about at the year 6000 at all. It just says that before everyone else is resurrected, either 210 or 240 years before that, the tzaddikim will be. But there are many, many different opinions about when the resurrection is going to happen, what the Seder is, the order is, who's first, who's second. The Rebbe actually wrote a pamphlet about this, going through all the different views. So these are two minority views that it's not a consensus view. It doesn't say before the year 6000. People are just surmising that Tchias HaMesim has to happen before the year 6000. It doesn't say that anywhere either when Tchias HaMesim is going to happen. In fact, the Zohar says elsewhere, not in the name of anybody. We have a concept in Gemara or Mishnayos, in the Mishnah, that when in the Talmud, when a statement is said without a name, then it's a consensus of all the rabbis. The same thing when the Zohar just says something, we say this is the opinion of the Rashbi, of Rav Shimon, and this is the final word. When it brings a name, it means this is his particular opinion, individual opinion, and it's not necessarily following other people. So the Zohar says elsewhere that this is the consensus opinion, is that Tchias HaMesim happens for everybody 40 years after Mashiach comes, and then for righteous people it happens earlier when Mashiach comes. So that means 40 years, when Mashiach comes, there'll be righteous people that will be resurrected right away so they could experience the actual redemption itself, because it's going to be a miraculous experience, and we want them to be part of it. Not only righteous people, but anybody who was killed, Al Kiddush Hashem, that means anybody who was killed, throughout the generations, or in Israel, terrorist attacks, the army, all these people are going to, because, they reach such an incredible high level and they deserve to be there when Mashiach comes. It's going to be a miraculous time. So, and then it says 40 years later, everybody's else. That's the consensus of when Mashiach. So this Zohar that says that tzaddikim are going to be 210 or 214 is definitely not a consensus. Secondly, it doesn't say anywhere it's going to be before the year 6000. People are saying that the year 6000, is kind of like an end point where it says after that's going to be a whole different kind of time period. So Mashiach has to come before then. So Tchias HaMesim must happen at least in the last year be right before 6000. And then if you're going to count backwards, in other words, it's based on a lot of assumptions. It's a minority opinion. I wouldn't give it too much weight, but like I say, everybody has the right to make the calculations. His other calculation I thought was pretty brilliant. How he did, like it says, like we said before, the Erev Boker 2300, and he says the Erev Boker is actually going on. And he figured out, he's a genius, by the way, and he knows Rabbi Hull, and he has incredible books. I mean, I even reached out to him when I saw the book. I emailed him. I said, "You blew me away." He said, "Thank you for the compliment." But he's a genius. How he there was so many difficulties with Jewish history. He figured it all out. Wow. He's a genius in secular history and archaeology and everything, and Jewish knowledge, and he knows how to fit everything in beautifully. So he calculated exactly when Nehemiah built the wall of Yerushalayim, right, for the Second Temple, and 2,300 years later is exactly the same case of 2027. I think that's a brilliant creative thing. I mean, that he thought of. I mean, mine is more based on traditional sources. His is original, but I think that's a very nice one. The Zohar thing. Now, as far as what you're saying about am I nervous? So I mentioned at the beginning, the Ramban already says that he says why he's not concerned. That he says, I'm giving a calculation. I wrote a book on it, and I'm giving a calculation. And what if I'm wrong? Yeah. Rashi himself, at the end of Daniel, says, because Rashi makes all these calculations, which are basically much what we said on, Rashi says, I may be wrong. And if I'm wrong, Rashi says, somebody else will come after me, and maybe they'll get it right. Yeah. So the Rabbad says, I'm telling you very clearly, I don't have Ruach HaKodesh. I didn't have any divine revelation that my calculations are correct. I don't even have any proof. I'm suggesting, based on the numbers, based on, I'm using like math and common sense and things like that. I have no clue if I'm right, and I have no divine inspiration if I'm right. Yeah. So the Ramban says, if you make that very clear, then nobody in his right mind, I mean, there are crazy people out there, but nobody's right mind is going to say that, well, the Ramban said that Mashiach is supposed to come, but he didn't come, so it's all over. Because the Ramban said, I don't know. I think so. I hope so. I'm praying for it to happen. So the Ramban was a giant of giants, and so was Rashi, and so was the Rambam, and so was the dozens of other great, the Gra, and all the great people that try to figure out the case. They were all wrong. It never happened in history that Rashi's case is over, that, okay, we have historically 1,000 Jews just decided that they're going to convert to Christianity or they're going to become atheists. Yeah. When every single case was over, we said, oh, sorry, we're going to have to try harder next time. And these were giants of giants, great Jewish leaders that had Ruach HaKodesh. Yeah. So if Weisberg says when Mashiach is coming, and I'm saying clearly I have no idea, obviously I don't have divine inspiration, obviously I don't know, I'm trying to figure it out. I think it makes sense, but... and I really think it's right, but I don't think, that someone's going to say that he was wrong, and therefore what? So I was wrong. Yeah. But on the other hand, I think if objectively you look at this, you say, like, this sounds really good. At least give him a 50% chance he's right. Yeah. Now, what are we asking you to do? Like, if we would tell you, prepare for Mashiach, he's coming within the next couple of years, sell your house, sell all your belongings, give it all to charity, and pray all day. Yeah. Then you say, you know what, you're only 50% chance. I'm not going to risk everything on you. But I'm telling you, don't change anything. Just learn more Torah, do more mitzvahs, do more chesed, give more charity, be nicer to your wife and kids, to your friends. Sure. What do you lose if I'm wrong? Nothing. What do you gain if you start preparing now when Mashiach comes and you see I was right? What do you gain? You gain a lot. That's my point. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity to share with your listeners these ideas, and maybe we could do it again. Talk about some other things.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. And on a day like this, Lag BaOmer, very special. And I think people needed to hear kind of this, because they hear your videos, and it's kind of like for the people who didn't listen to your stuff, from start to finish. Right. We're talking about going back a year and a half, something like that. This is a good kind of compilation in one kind of condensed. It's very good to have something like this for people.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right. And, I guess since we talked about Mashiach should come now.
Amen.
By the end of the night, by the time I press this button.
Amen. Amen.
All right. Thank you so much.
We're still here.
We're still here. Okay, so I'm just going to say this. That, you know, um, you brought up the Zohar, right? That source that we talk about a lot, which we hear Rabbi Kessin, right, talk about it.
Rabbi Winston, Rabbi Kessin.
Rabbi Winston, and then obviously they're echoing the Leshem, right? Who brings that point. So I think, and he'll forgive me if I'm wrong, that he might not be. I don't think it was clear necessarily to him.
Yeah.
What Zohar you were talking
I know. I don't think he was initiated in what I was talking about.
Right. You know why? Because if he was, then he would have been like. It's interesting because it also overlaps with that 2027 figure that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Right, because he keeps converging on 2027.
Correct.
And that Zohar also.
Yeah. Well, that Zohar says either 2027 or 2030.
Okay, but it's one of the opinions.
Yeah, correct.
So I perhaps look, Torah is big.
Yeah.
And you know, not everyone is immediately familiar with every single reference. I mean, we're talking about libraries of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So, and he spends time on the specific, on specific aspects, and it's possible he may have not. So it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to kind of confirm that with him. You know, maybe show, you know, give him the exact reference so that he could take a look at it.
Yeah.
Have a chance to think about it, because that was like a last minute kind of.
I didn't really want to even mention the Leshem necessarily, because it would have been a whole can of worms.
Yeah.
You know? And I knew that we were coming up on time and whatever it is. So.
You had balls to bring up Goonies, and that
because listen,
I respect that.
I knew that. I kind of knew that he would even at the very least understand. You know, wouldn't mind. Let's put it that way, because at the end of the day, you know, Chabad, they want to accept people as they are. And if a person like myself is coming from a certain place and coming with certain, you know, and it's an analogy. It's not like I'm referencing something that's like totally, you know, like I don't know.
I would have
against Torah. And stuff
this
like
is
that.
clear. No, I would have done it differently. I know I'm a Monday morning quarterback, right?
Yeah.
But I would have been like, if I could replay that and like do it, I would have been like, all right, there was this movie. I'm sorry to interrupt. There's this movie that was like a generational phenomena that you know that came out in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Right. And it literally just stayed with an entire generation of kids. It was truly a phenomenal impact on the consciousness of man. It has it's this funny sounding movie. It's called The Goonies, but it really has elements of like clues being left, and it takes multi generations of people to finally get down to understanding what the treasure map says. And that's how I would have done it. But that's being a Monday morning quarterback.
Yes, right. That is
kind of douchey for me to even talk about it right now.
Yeah.
Because you know why? Because I care about the Goonies. And this is a man who has no idea.
Listen,
never heard of it.
We spoke about this. We spoke about it in the context of Mashiach, and we made like different analogies from the movie. And I just, you know, I don't remember if we ever spoke about, you know, like that moment at the end where the ship basically sails away by itself. Because of the tide.
We mentioned a little something about
what is that?
That, my friend, is the Beis Hamikdash on its way.
And we're just watching it. We're like watching it from a distance.
Right. It's set sail now. You know, now people will be witnessing it. You know, it's going to be passing through many coastlines along the way.
Yeah.
And people will be tracking this phenomena.
Yeah.
The worldwide media,
Yeah.
right? Like, journalists will be following it.
Yeah.
This ghost ship, as
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
we're using, instead of the
Yeah.
Marshmallow Man, we're using the pirate ship from the Goonies now,
Yeah.
right? To fill in that metaphor, but I think you all know what I'm saying.
Well, Frank, you know what's interesting? The 5787 technically starts in September of 2026, right? A couple of months before that will be what? It will be the World Cup, which is hosted soccer, which is hosted in America. So all eyes will be on America. Billions and billions of people. Billions and billions. Billions of people.
And billions.
Billions of people. America, it's hosted by America, Canada, and Mexico. It's like the NAFTA World Cup. And it's gonna have like 48 countries participating, which is like the biggest thing. And then in 2028, we have the Olympics in Los Angeles. So,
sir,
I find it to be fascinating.
Apologies, thousands of apologies. I'm concerned that my computer is going to die. It looks at have 5%, and sometimes it just turns off at 5%. So because it's late, and because this material was quite dense,
yeah.
Maybe let's do it to be continued. And I just wanted, before I go, I wanted to say there seems to be maybe a glimmer of hope of reconciliation and progress. If you look at, I just saw something on the twits where somebody said that Elon and Donald Trump should work together, and then Elon responded, "I agree," or something like that. And there might be,
yeah.
Want to...
Yeah, so senior aides to U.S. President Trump have convinced him to temper his criticism of Musk following today's spat. Additionally, White House officials have managed to schedule a call with Musk on Friday in hopes of brokering peace between him and Trump. Dude, honestly, I think this whole thing is like kayfabe. I think this whole thing was like a setup to.
I hope you're right, and I shared your post about that
because it was too short. Yeah, it was. Thank you, by the way. It was too like short-lived to be, anything. I don't know.
No, but basically, let me just quickly before. Okay, 1 second. Gosh, cumbersome. Okay, so here we have this guy Bill Ackman. He's some big account on X. I don't know who he is.
He's like a investor, like a stocks investor.
Right. So Bill Ackman writes. He writes. Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
He writes, "I support real Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and they should make peace for the benefit of our great country. We're much stronger together than apart." And then Elon responds, "You're not wrong." Okay. That was at 9:30 after we started this podcast.
Okay. Listen, we'll see what happens. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
When did I post the Rebbe? Let's see. Of course, I'm responsible for this. Right? My post.
The Rebbe is responsible for this.
Well, obviously, because
when did the Chabad website?
Dude, I posted this at 9:29. Elon Musk at 9:29.
Good job, Frank. Thank you, Frank. Frank saved the world.
No. Do you see that?
Yes.
That's when I posted it. Do you see 9:29?
Yes, I do. Yes, we all see
let's
it.
go back. Let's go back to Mr. Musk and see when he posted his thing. Where is it?
I don't see the response. I'm trying to look for the reply.
9:27. So I had nothing to do with it. He posted this a full 2 minutes before I posted that.
Yeah, I see it. Yes. It was 9:31. Unbelievable.
Dag blam it. I thought I had something to do with it. All right.
Wait, why wouldn't you?
Well, he posted at 9:27. I posted at 9:29.
Oh, Ackman. Yeah. Ackman posted at 9:27. I'm sorry.
No, Elon.
Elon, no, he posted at 9:31. He responded at 9:31. Oh no, he's laughing.
No, it says you're. It says.
Oh, that
you're
was
not-
another response. Okay, yeah, 927. Listen, who knows?
Damn it! I could have been in the history books. All
Yeah,
right.
but when did Chabad post it? When did Jem?
Oh well, no, he posted it much earlier.
Yeah,
That's
so who knows?
No, that's Chabad, but I'm talking about me, man, as always. Okay, which is what's important. Me.
Who's the one to put this thing together?
I want to put like Rafi says. I want to push the button. By the way, Rafi has created a new device to express his dissatisfaction with everything. It's very unique, by the way.
Mhm.
When he's upset at me
Mhm.
because I stopped him from doing something destructive, he says, "Lion eat Papa."
That's not cool.
It's not.
It's very cute. It's
But
very cute
it's-
sounding, but it's
it's certainly not cool, but it's adorable,
It is adorable.
and it's very interesting,
It is, yeah.
right? Anytime, and he doesn't like something, lion eat that thing.
I wear. Why does he say lion? Oh, like Lion of Judah. That's interesting.
No, he probably just means a lion. He's sort
Yeah,
of scary
it's a
lion.
random-
and,
yeah,
lion
lion
eats.
can eat things.
Yeah. So now so for the past week or two, he's been saying whatever he doesn't like. He says, "Lion eat this, lion eat that."
Yeah.
So I did it to him today. I
Yeah.
feel a little weird about it. But
He was like scared.
no, I didn't. No, here's what I didn't say. Lion eat. God forbid. I said he wanted to go to the park,
Yeah.
and I got fed up with him. Calling his lion to eat me. So I said, "You know what? Lion eat park. How do you like
Yeah.
that?"
Yeah. What did he
Okay?
say? What did he
And
say?
He just kind of like looked at me. He's kind of thought about it for a while. Got lost in thought. He wasn't getting upset, but he was
Yeah.
serious.
He's like, really? That can happen?
Yeah, he's like, lion eat park.
And if I'm in the park, maybe I'll get eaten.
He's like, touche, old man, touche.
yes.
Yeah.
It's hilarious, man. Need to get me one of those
Get
guys.
one of those little guys.
Yeah,
And
he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
good guy. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Today was my mom's birthday.
Oh, nice, Mazel tov.
Thank you. So I think it's a good day to start this. What we're
Yes.
doing.
Yes.
All righty, folks.
All right,
I'm at
folks.
2%.
Yeah. So we're gonna sign off for now, and then next time we'll talk about the whole 2027 discussion on Twitter, which I
Yeah,
think is
yeah.
very fascinating.
Yeah, well, all these, UFO folks.
Yes.
And now we got Mr. Chris Bledsoe,
Yeah. Saying stuff.
Yeah. We have to remind the folks at home why anybody should care, or why we slightly care. It's about all the NASA folks that are
Yeah.
interested in this guy.
Yes.
Um,
NASA folks, and also, yeah, the whole thing of armies of heaven, Mashiach coming with the armies of heaven, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we have to search out the clips of Bart Sadok talking about it.
Yeah, we will for sure.
It's not going to be easy. He has a lot of stuff on YouTube.
I'll find it.
Oh, my friend. If only we could get a Bart Sadok AI
Yeah.
to go through his videos.
I
right?
can ask Grok to help me. He might.
See what happens.
It might be able to.
All right.
All right, folks. Laila Tov.
Good night, everyone.
Peace.
All right.